Shaxi is in like that fighting for the #1 APAC points spot at the moment. I'm not certain if he's #1 right now because it can be a little bit difficult to keep up with.
Yeah, depends when the cutoff's been given.
Yeah. But basically him, Rivius and Tyler, as well as a newcomer to the APAC scene, have really been just gunning for that #1 spot. So he has been grinding the hell out of this year and having some good results.
Right, well, let's take a look at the picks and bans for the matchup so far. All 9 decks have to be brought, but some of them are going to be banned out. A Rogue and then a Warrior ban. So not the mirrored Rogue ban we've seen at the start of a lot of matches in the current Quest Rogue iterations. But, you know, Derek, talk me through the rest of this lineup and how this is shook out in the end.
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting to see a Rogue ban right at the start because it's not the usual Quest Rogue ban that we've seen in a lot of matches here at the Global Games. It's an Odd Rogue ban. Taiwan are one of the teams choosing the slightly less popular Odd Rogue as opposed to the Quest Rogue. And having that banned away from Singapore, they are clearly indicating their anti-aggro potential is maybe somewhat limited, as we can see through the fact that they have Death Rattle Hunter, their Even Lock is quite susceptible to it, their Shudderwock Shaman maybe as opposed to an Even Shaman. Their anti-aggro capabilities maybe aren't quite so strong. Even then, I do find it quite surprising that the Odd Rogue took the ban, considering just how objectively powerful certain decks like the Tugwaggle Druid are in this format.
It's definitely an extreme of ban level, isn't it? It's like, oh, do I ban the Odd Rogue or the Tugwaggle Druid? Like, those are two extreme versions of styles of decks in Hearthstone. But let's take a look at how the matchups actually laid out, because those picks and bans happen and then an order is decided, and this is the one we're looking at. So we're starting with Warlock versus Priest, and then what will happen is we follow on Hunter versus Paladin, Warrior versus Hunter, so on until one team gets to 3 wins.
Yeah, and it does appear to me, having taken a little bit look at the decks, how they shake up against each other. Singapore have got the better of the pick and ban and choosing phase, just about. They've got a couple of their aggressive decks against the anti-control decks that are a little bit weak to aggressive strategies, like the second game, Odd Paladin for Singapore, Death Rattle Hunter for Chinese.
Yeah, that's a horrible matchup.
That's
for
not
Hunter,
one that you want to be facing at all. And then for Singapore, they've got their Death Rattle Hunter up against the Odd Warrior, which is a pretty good matchup for the Death Rattle Hunter. Not a runaway victory, but decent depending on who you ask. The saving graces, I suppose, for Taiwan, where they're going to be trying to pull back this victory, is they have, first of all, Aggro Mage versus Quest Rogue. Should be an easy win if everything goes according to plan, as long as Quest Rogue doesn't do Quest Rogue stuff.
Right, I'm personally, I've been loving Aggro Mage. Aggro Mage is the deck, right? You know when you sit on ladder and things just, you have one of those days, it's just not going well. Yeah. You're playing a bit of Druid, which is weird for it not to go well because it's Druid. It's be a lot of mirrors. And you know, you're playing a bit of Even Lock or whatever, you're like, I'm just not feeling it. I'm going to play some Aggro Mage. That's the deck I fall back on to say, I'm just going to jam 10 games of this and probably win a lot of them, because I think the deck is actually very powerful right now.
I've just been having the exact opposite experience,
oh, really?
to be honest. I just cannot win a game with Aggro Mage. Every time I feel like I should learn this, I should properly dig in and learn the current form of the build. I just queue up and I'm facing aggro, 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 which are all pretty miserable matchups because you just lose the board early on. And then I'm facing Druid and I get Malfurion and I just lose.
I've gone to the school of APX Void, in which he believes a lot of the aggro matchups are good for Mage.
Well, I'm sure they are for APX Void piloting
and Mage. APX Raven, which I'm going to rename myself to, because I'm a follower. I do enjoy his playstyle and his Mage specialization. But let's not talk about Mage right now. Let's bring the focus back onto this first game. As you see Team Singapore, I think all 4 are together, even though we can only see 2.5, 2.5 men there. But I think there's all 4, unless are you going to correct me?
I think last week it was 3 of them together, and Caius, they were saying he had school the next day, so he couldn't be with them.
Oh, okay, and we are playing in the week again, so
yes, exactly, because they were playing last week at least, even though it was middle of the day for us here, or evening for us, it was like 2 AM for them over in Singapore. So I think if it's the same as last week, it will just be the 3 of them. But they were saying in their interview, they love playing together in the same place, because they're all really good friends, they've been practicing, playing together for ages, so it really boosts their morale.
Extremely tight-knit community in general as well. The support for the Singapore team has been great. Look at these decks. We see the highlight, I would say, of this Priest is the singular Night Scale Matriarch in the deck versus, I think, just a completely straightforward Even Warlock, unless I've missed something, Mr. Derek.
Looks pretty standard to me. The Bone Mare is the new-ish
The new standard. Tainted Zealot, we saw yesterday actually get lethal with a Hellfire and win the game on the spot. So it was weird. It was very similar to right now. It was in hand early on. Stayed in hand till the last turn of the game, and it was like, oh yeah, hit Zealot, Hellfire, win.
Yeah, Zealot has always almost made its way into even Warlock. I feel like it's just been pushed by the wayside with slightly more powerful cards. I would argue which includes Sun Fury Protector, of which Taiwan is only running one, which I'm not a big fan of. I find Sun Fury Protector just wins me so many games in even Warlock.
I guess the difference is if they're planning on banning a lot of aggro decks, then suddenly Sun Fury isn't as valuable. I agree on ladder.
Yeah.
It's almost like, well, that along with a few of the heal cards are your anti-aggro tools,
bread
right?
and butter. Yeah.
So we'll see though, but I will say the old double mountain giant is a pretty good start here for Roger.
Yeah, even with a Twilight Drake to be throwing alongside it, they do need to be a little bit careful about how they meter out their threats because of the Twilight Acolyte that's sitting in hand for Singapore.
Oh, it's not.
And because of that, they're going Coin Twilight Drake.
I was going to say, it isn't the first time I've seen this, and it surprises me every time, even though I logically understand why. But I still, it feels bad. That giant was 3 mana, and now it's 5. Well, 4 now, but what's going on?
The interesting thing is, though, even if you knew that there was a Twilight Acolyte in your opponent's hand, I would still consider playing the Mountain Giant there because it stops the Twilight Drake from your opponent hard in its tracks. They cannot play their best turn 4 play, or you just completely value trade them and you're miles and miles ahead. I think if you did know it was there, you should probably play it the way they did. Even then, I would not have hated Giant coming down on turn 3 just because of the potential to shut down Drake from the Priest.
Yeah, one thing I was wondering is, could you not Giant turn 3, this board state, if you ignore the Twilight Drakes, happens, and then you can Giant again and coin out the Homunculus? Is that too risky to go through? Because at worst, you'd lose the Giant and keep a 2/8 and a 2... Well, the 2/4 gets dealt with, but I don't think there's pain in the deck, right? So I don't think there's a good way you'd get through that Homunculus as the Priest. That's
fair. It's a turn before Cabal Shadow Priest. You can maybe then soften up the Twilight Acolyte with your Homunculus and then go Spellstone on the next turn.
Yeah, maybe draw just a Silence for your 2/8 Giant to buff it back up to 8. I don't know, it's just... Because this just, it weirds me out. It weirds me out seeing a coin Twilight Drake when you have 2/3 drops.
And it's something you see often because the majority of decks at the moment that are not hyper aggro decks have to have an answer to Mountain Giant on turn 4, or turn 3 even, be it Naturalize or Shield Slam or Polymorph, whatever your control deck is, you need an answer for that. And so that's why you often see Twilight Drake first to bait out that answer, then you play the better minion of Twilight Drake afterwards, of Mountain Giant afterwards, sorry. And it's worked out decently well here for Roger. This is not a bad board state.
Exactly. You can see the thought pattern and the path that Chinese Taipei have foreseen. This is how they imagine the board to look like in almost every single circumstance. Because especially turns 4, 5, and 6 are relatively straightforward for Priest. They're never doing anything mind-blowing, are they, on turn 6 or 5?
And if they are, it's stuff that doesn't interact with your board. It's going like Pyro, Cleric, Shield, Divine Hit, something like that, where they're just focusing on their own game plan, to which you can respond smack face for 14 damage.
Seems good.
I wonder.
There's one thing I do quite like about 9-deck formats, is that things like this happen because most players probably, although we did see it in playoffs a little bit, wouldn't naturally go to Priest as a pick in their tournament lineup if it was a 4-deck, right? It's not super common. But when you have to bring all the decks, it means that you can actually, I'm going to build this deck this way because I'm going to play the Twilight Acolytes, because if I'm against the control decks or the the heavy mid-range decks, I'll say, then there's tools that I can use to actually get some work done. And now, I imagine this is just as a gap to hit that Psychic Scream turn.
Yeah, just trying to tide them through. Because there was consideration, I imagine, for things like Cabal Shadow Priest to steal the Giant. Then you're taking a lot of damage. If you go for the Defile here as Chinese Taipei, the only minion that survives on their side of the board is the big Giant anyway. So I think this is a fine way for Singapore to be safe against pretty much everything other than Mossy Horror. And even then, it's not that bad.
Yeah. Do like the Geist, I think, this turn. Just removing those power word shields from the deck. It's all that it removes.
Yeah.
It's not in the different days of Priest where there was even like Mind Vision being ran at one point,
So many possibilities.
Yeah, whatever they're going to do on this turn, they want to make sure it's not a committal of their best minions, because this play just screams Psychic Scream. It's clearly just a delay tactic to try and get rid of the board next turn. then the Priest will follow up with their own powerful win condition, which has now been drawn.
So the first time this week we've seen Anduin not in the bottom 3 cards.
Yeah, every time it's been right at the bottom, but finally now Sequinox has, I don't know, he's been practicing his Death Knight draws here and has got himself in a decent spot now.
What kind of impact do you think Nightscale Matriarch has in this matchup? Because normally the matchup becomes quite straightforward. Anduin comes down and then you start just hitting them.
Yeah.
So what is Nightscale here?
It could be decent actually, because unless you're teching in a copy of Siphon Soul, even Warlock can be quite unreactive in terms of when it has an empty board state. Its main removal tools are having a giant on board before your opponent can develop. So if we see Scream on this turn, and then a relatively weak turn from Roger, maybe Nightscale Matriarch could get the job done, at least of developing the board state quite heavily.
Yeah, I was looking at the Scream there. There was a way you could kind of get away with it and just go for Dustbreaker. The problem is you'd leave 2 4-1s up and then your Anduin does nothing.
Yeah. I think you want to set up for at least the possibility of going Anduin next turn.
There was a crazy turn if there was a Power Word Shield though, because you'd have Pyro and Shield as well, which would have been insane. Boom.
Production having a bit of fun with us there, as ever. A little bit early in the day, I would say, for a Volcano. We've got a long while yet, production. But
This should be the last part, just before Lethal in the last match. It's just not this board. And then they're like,
damn it. I guess I'll make a golden beetroot.
okay, so
Yeah, just trying to get themselves down to hooked Reaver range, because outside of the Reavers, this hand doesn't do much.
also never too bad to get double Spellstone. I wonder if Hooked Reavers is just fine though. I mentioned this yesterday about just playing them versus Priest. You've just seen Scream.
Yeah, it's going into the Anduin turn, so it's a 4/4 is fine, isn't it? Would you do you think you would expect your opponent to just play Shadow Reaper Anduin anyway? Like, if you play the Hooked Reaver here, maybe they just go for it anyway. If you go double Beetle, they might just play it because they want to kill you as quick as possible.
Right. It's a tough one, right? Because my only thought is this pushes a nice amount of damage anyway. It's relatively hard to kill, as it doesn't die to Dustbreaker. But also as well, you've just seen, or at least your opponent knows that the 2 Giants have just been thrown into your deck. It's, I'll say, unlikely at this deck count that you draw them quick enough again.
Yeah.
So if your opponent knows that, are they just going to... They're not saving Anduin, because it's not like you've seen 0 Giants and they could come out this turn.
And Singapore is also going to be expecting Lich King next turn at some point. Maybe Gen Greymane or the sorry, not the Despicable Dreadlord, the
Dread Infernal.
Dread Infernal, sorry, wrong Dread. So they're going to want Shadow Reaper Anduin to deal with something, I imagine. So I do actually like saving back the Anduin here, although usually in the control matchups you just throw it down as quick as possible. The threats are so consistent from even Warlock that I think you got to snipe off something with the Battle Cry.
And I think as well, this is a nice display of what Matriarch can do. Is otherwise the turn looked a bit meh.
Yeah.
You could Cabal Shadow Priest to 2/4, but you're probably saving that with Drake. You could play your own Twilight Drake, but then you're kind of doing nothing else. So Matriarch kind of fills that gap. Hellfire can be used to kill this off completely, if at all.
Or just the Spellstone, I think. Like, Spellstone trade is probably what Roger's looking at. It's not perfect, because he'd like to go for, I imagine, something like Tap Skulking Guy.
Almost out of time.
And maybe Singapore are thinking in their heads, okay, this is a big victory because they didn't play Lich King, which they might have in hand. It was a big disruption turn where 4 of their mana was just eaten up in having to kill the Matriarch.
It's a good one.
That's not bad at all.
It's always nice after seeing one Spellstone that was for 5, dropping like an 8 health minion again. It's like, well, kill this one then. And I was considering the Hellfire instead, mainly because it just procs both Spellstones for 7, which is actually a pretty big deal versus Priest.
And what we've been talking a lot about the micro of this game, the trades, trying to stick a minion, things like that. In terms of the macro, how this game will be shaping out over the next few turns, unless Chinese Taipei can find themselves Blood Reaver Gul'dan, it's probably going to start looking a little bit shaky for them.
Right.
They have the Shadow Reaper Anduin they're going to be facing down soon. Alex Straza could come at any point just to get their health back down to the 15-point total. And then Singapore should be able to just whittle through all the healing that Roger has left to them and then deliver lethal.
There is a lot of healing though. Spellstone's now
There's
7, and then there's 6 more from the armor of the Beatles. Not the band, the minions.
Thanks for the clarification. I was very confused there.
I could tell. I was going to say, I don't know if you're old enough to know the Beatles, but they're pretty famous.
I've heard of the Beatles.
You've heard of music before.
Yeah. I think, ironically, Lorinda might have not heard of the Beatles, actually.
It's actually pretty funny.
Roger clearly going to be a little bit upset that nothing was destroyed from the hand there through the Skulking Geist, but with only Power Word Shield as the 1-cost minions, are you really expecting it to hang about for that long? It was probably just mainly for the 4/6 body, which does not die to Anduin.
Do you know what music Lorinda likes? I actually don't. I don't think I've ever spoken to him about music, ever.
I think he likes Pachelbel's Canon is the one song I've heard about him that he quite likes.
What is that?
It's the wedding song. It's not
He walked down the aisle.
Here Comes the Bride.
Oh right. I was like, what
It's like,
look at this. This is a banger.
He does.
Like, look at this. You're like, what?
You'd recognise it if I played it to you. I won't. It's.
Why can't you play it?
Well, I mean.
Oh, not actually played it to me.
On YouTube. Like, I can't actually play it.
Just checking that. Yeah. You might have hidden talents there.
Yeah, I'm a string quartet on my own, actually. I don't know if you know. I play one instrument with each limb.
Derek one-man band. Brown. We finally found your name.
I think he also likes a bit of the wibs and wobs. He's fairly fond of.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did see him jamming out to like a break music at DreamHack.
Oh, yeah.
With Mr. J.
Finally getting to see the power of the Zealot. If you thought Defile was always a board clear, Zealot Defile is always a board clear. It's basically a baby Godfrey.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's mini Godfrey, isn't it?
Almost out of time.
Do you just like just slam a Dread Infernal now, though, and say, well, it is all just getting in the Demon Bank, even if it's cleaned up, right? Like, worst case, but instead of Anduin being bottom 3, maybe it's Gul'dan this time, Darren.
It could be. Singapore are quite happy to throw it down now. They want to get these hero powers rolling, and killing off a 6/6 in the process is just a lovely benefit on top of that. And now the awkward question for Roger becomes, how do we use our healing cards here? We want to stay above 16 health primarily because 2 Mind Blast, 3 pings, 16 damage before you've seen any Shadow Visions for Mind Blast is the maximum damage. So I do fully expect to see some kind of healing on this turn, probably a Shroom Brewer. But if you heal too much, Alex Straza just brings you back down. You need to strike a very awkward, perfect balance here for Taipei if they don't want to be healing too much or too little.
Yeah, depending on what cards I've seen, it's normally, I feel like 20 is safe enough to give you time to heal as well, just around that number. But once you start dipping into the mid-teens, you can just be dead.
Yeah.
I don't see anything majorly wrong with Gen Shroom Brewer, although maybe you drop Shroom Brewer Giggling Inventor to tap.
That's interesting. You go up to, then you go up to 16, which is the dead point. I think.
Yeah.
I think you have to stay above 16. It's just too easy for Singapore to
Okay, Shroom Brewer, Spellstone tap.
Just mitigating everything I was just talking about for the last 2 minutes.
Yes.
Love it.
Do my best. Well, I think there is some level of valid concern that Chinese Taipei can't heal forever. So getting to Gul'dan, you do need to get there.
Yeah.
The longer you wait, the more likely it is they have the Mind Blast anyway. So
I think there's a good chance that Sequinox tries to develop something on the following turn, though. So then you can quite happily go tap Spellstone Giggling. It is weird to see a Giggling Inventor in even Warlock. It's quite a sight to behold. Obviously through the Psychic Screen.
I wonder if Scream Tap is okay. Because I think after this turn, you were confident they do not have Blood Reaver Gul'dan in hand. You have a flurry of demons that would have been resummoned. They go in the safety net. I'm going to trade off the board and put a 3/3 down.
Yeah. I think the major decisions were either this play, where you send no pings to face, or where you play double Dustbreaker and get 2 damage out of the cards. You're basically trading a Dustbreaker for 2 damage to face. If you had a Mind Blast, you'd consider that more heavily, or 2 Mind Blasts, sorry, you'd consider it more heavily. I think considering the burst damage isn't actually there, This is a fine middle ground.
And we see the Spellbreaker being more of a peacekeeper in Chinese Taipei's hand, as it is standing in between the two nemesis of Giggling Inventor and Mossy Horror. A combo you don't often see paired together in the same hand. It's like, whoa, guys, don't make me silence those shields off. Like, you know, it's just a weird pair of cards to see in a hand.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Every turn now, there's full consideration from Roger as to what health he wants to end on.
And I guess, although I was saying they really want to be staying above 16 at all costs, at some point, they might be realizing we're going to have to take a risk that they don't have it. So maybe they want to say, we want to do this sooner rather than later.
Well, I think for me as
And
well,
it looks like they might be doing that.
Singapore are signaling that that's the case, right? Because they didn't particularly need to kill those minions. They're not dead to those minions. You could have sent more damage to face that turn and set them up for lethal.
Yeah.
And they didn't, because it's not there.
So Roger then, I guess, taking the read from Sequinox's play, which I was saying he did not have to make. He could have gone for double Duskbreaker ping face, which might have sent off alarm signals to Roger, where he then rips the Spellstone instantly and just heals back up.
Shadowy thoughts.
Which, I mean, for Sequinox, maybe fooling his opponent into a false sense of security, it did just give him an out for lethal here with Mind Blast off the top.
So I wonder now, because again, if I am Singapore, I am certain there's no Blood Reaper Gul'dan. Is this just Scream him? Because that's what, 6 minions.
That's a lot of health they're losing out on, is the main thing. 6 armor you're denying them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you Scream, there's 6 minions in the deck, so 6 worse draws than Gul'dan.
That's true.
And you put them to 14. You only have 12 cards left.
Yeah.
You know, I like it.
Probably
because
start off with a Cleric first as well if you're going to Psychic Scream.
Sure, yeah, you could have yeah, it didn't keep Cleric there. I think I would have thrown it in as well.
Yeah.
I think I would have joined you on that one.
It's definitely worth considering for an extra ping. If you're not saving it for an extra ping though, I think I prefer throwing it in the deck. What is
Right, this
what is
one's
a 1-3
weird now.
gonna do? Yeah,
Yeah, this bit feels weird. The playing it afterwards really makes it feel wonky.
I think this is a slight missequencing that it's not a misplay, like it's not a strict misplay because this 1-3 could chip away for some extra damage.
Right.
But I think just the most important thing by a very wide margin is stopping Gul'dan.
And again, it's like there's no divine hymns in hand. So
Yeah.
there's no heat. You know, you can at least say, I'll save the Cleric and try and heal because I've got Wild Pyro, Cleric, Divine Hymn.
The hero power's changed, so it's just a 1-3 now, basically.
So many.
And it also gives a target to a second Spellstone, which you know is somewhere in the deck. Maybe not in hand, because you feel like, oh, they stayed at 16 health that turn. They probably don't have the Spellstone, or they would have used it. So now Roger kind of playing the mind games with his opponent,
Funnily enough,
convincing him that
he's going to eat a Spellstone now, isn't it? Or maybe.
Oh, that's
Like, that's a lot of healing.
Yeah.
And most importantly, a target for Bone Man. Not Spellstone.
Yeah, still staying at that 16 health point because, well, he knows that the damage isn't there in hand because he would have done it last turn. He'd be dead. So it would have to be exactly top deck Mind Blast, 1 out of 12 or 2 out of 12 because Chinese Taipei don't know how many Mind Blasts Singapore have. Actually, no, if it was a 2 out of 12, they wouldn't be able to kill them. So.
Shadowy thoughts.
So Duskbreaker number 2 is going to be able to clear this up. Can even drop a Twilight Drake or get another Cleric down, maybe even Pyromancer. Because at this point, you've got to say what's left. Gul'dan and a Spellstone. The problem is, although you've given them more cards to mess around with, if they do get to that Gul'dan, you're getting to the point where you've not really done enough. You've ran them out of a lot of heals, though.
So if it was Mind Blast and Cleric for the damage, that is 11 damage, I think, that you can set up for because you have 5 and 3 things. So you, if this was just a Hellfire instead of a Duskbreaker that you had in hand, so it didn't make a minion, I think you'd kind of prefer that because there'd be no Spellstone target, so the healing is quite dramatically reduced from your opponent.
Well, then there's only Gul'dan because 2 Shroom Brewers would have been played, right?
Yeah. Or Spellstoning your own minion.
Yeah.
All these garbage draws coming through for Taipei. This is the latent effect of Psychic Scream clearly coming into effect.
meddlesome insects.
Spellstone's going to have to be used now. It is for the full power of 7. Goes back up to 19, but still.
Ooh, Mind Blast off the top was still an out for lethal once again. And with Alexstrasza finally coming down, is Gul'dan even good enough anymore? It gets back a Vulgar Homunculus, but I don't know if that's going to do it. And with no healing found, I'm starting to think that might just be it.
There is a Neutron Bone Man.
Okay.
I mean, it
that's
keeps
true.
them up.
It's a lot of healing. A lot of taunt, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, you might have
Okay,
to, right? You
fair
can't
enough.
kill it any other way.
And then that would be 1 damage off lethal for Singapore,
Yeah.
I think, because 3 pings and a Mind Blast, 11 damage. Wow, that's pretty nutty. Would that mean that Shadow Visions off the top would be lethal? Because then they could go double Mind Blast and 2 pings, which would be the full 10 mana, because they go Mind Blast, Visions, Mind Blast, and 2 pings in between. So that's 14 damage. So Shadow Visions or Mind Blast are both lethal, I believe. Assuming they get Mind Blast off the Shadow Visions.
Almost out of time.
But I don't think there's really anything else the Chinese Taipei can do. They could tap, I suppose, for some mystery card that we're not aware of that they could play for 9 mana. So this really is it, trying to get a counter-lethal through some miracle play.
Making 3 targets as taunts instead of kind of 2 attacks in.
Oh, that's not it. Homing in on lethal very, very quickly, and they can probably get themselves to the point here with enough pings to face where Gul'dan would not save their opponent.
2, 6, 7. Okay. I'm wondering whether you just say, okay, Cleric, Pyromancer, Mind Blast, Divine Hymn, draw in my deck. I have the damage. Even if they play Gul'dan, so what? It's 5 health.
Yeah, I think you can maybe set up for a more consistent lethal where if the best draw in the deck is Gul'dan, you can set up lethal through that. Where if you just go ping Pyromancer or ping him, Pyromancer ping, you do 6 damage to face, which gets them down to 6. They heal up for 5 maximum with Gul'dan, and then you hit them for 11 next turn.
But that's only if you draw the right card, right?
No, you have that in hand, because Mind Blast Cleric is 11 damage to face.
Right, because they're Cleric.
So if you set them to 6, they basically can't heal out of range, I think. Oh, they might have just figured out lethal.
Okay,
it was lethal on 4. I think they were laughing as well, as there was a...
Too deep in the tank there, yeah. We went too far into, do we get more draws? Do we play around this? It's like, no, you just kill them. And it seems like that's what at least Singapore got to at that point.
Yeah, a Boom Lab style lethal puzzle there for Singapore, but thankfully, for their sake, they're a little bit smarter than us, so they managed to find it in the end. Either way, I think you could set up a 100% victory scenario, is what I was kind of tunnel visioning on there, where there was no draw that could have saved their opponent. But either way, overall, I think that was a pretty well-played game from Singapore. They were metering out their threats pretty well. The one blip, in my opinion, was not shuffling in the cleric on into their opponent
and not getting the damage from it, right? It's one or the other. They didn't do any.
And also just the fact that I think saving their Shadow Reaper Anduin to actually kill something off was a really heads-up play, because that's not something you often do in control matchups, and it was a good read of the game.
Yeah, and we can take a look at the match number 2, or game number 2, should I say, if we want to be fully correct. And it is this another lopsided matchup, at least in my opinion. It's Real on the Hunter for Chinese Taipei, and Singapore is going to be sending out Crumpled on the Paladin. It is Odd Paladin versus the Hunter. I'm just going to double check. The Hunter list always interests me. Does have Ziliax.
Okay.
It's playing the Charged Devilsaur version.
Oh, yeah, that's...
I'd say instead of a High Main.
I think Brazil's playing that as well.
Yeah, 1 Tark Reaper definitely helps, 1 Gluttonous Ooze, but yeah.
It's just
still just a lot of gaps. Still just a lot of gaps.
And this really does just start to show how important it was for Chinese Taipei to win that first game, which they didn't. Because this matchup is pretty miserable for them. It's probably going to go to a 2-0 here. And then the game after that is their Odd Warrior for Taiwan up against the Death Rattle Hunter for Singapore, which I know people are arguing about that matchup all over on social media and in Hearthstone. I still feel that Death Rattle Hunter is in a pretty good spot in that matchup. Deathstalker Rexar, in any kind of a timely fashion, not playing into your opponent's mind control tech, stuff like that.
Right.
You should be in a very good spot as Death Rattle Hunter there, which means we could just see if the matchups go as they're intended to. Chinese Taipei 3-0 eliminated out of the global games.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible, especially because it's just this matchup, the Odd Warrior versus the Hunter, is just so difficult. I've played many a game of this matchup, and most of the time, like, something godlike has to happen, or I think more accurately, something has to go very wrong for the Paladin for it to actually cause enough of an issue to make the Hunter get ahead at that point, because it is truly difficult. You'd have to get Candle Shot exactly into Keleseth, into a Tar Creeper, to be able to even fight back a little bit.
Because the problem I find for the Death Rattle Hunter in that matchup is they usually start to wrestle back board around turns 5 or 6 against the aggro decks when they're going for the cube stuff, Spider Bomb, Ziliax, things like that. But against the odd Paladin, you don't have that much time. You have to have one board by turn 5 or the game's over, because they level up or Fungal Mancer you, and you just can't fight back after that. That's when they actually start killing you with their very high damage output cards. So I just find that the comeback cards for the Hunter just come a little bit too late.
Yeah, there are certain things that help, like even a flanking strike on a certain target is okay. Spider bombs can often get work done, even if they kill 2/1/1s, maybe. you know what I mean? Like, just something good enough there. So there are things that can happen. It's definitely not just completely over before it's begun. But we can see the players getting ready there, and it's going to be an uphill climb here, and we might see Singapore just stomp straight through to BlizzCon at this point.
It's certainly looking like it could go that way. The Odd Warrior versus Death Rattle Hunter is a matchup I've been talking to Zorkthar a lot about, actually, from Team Norway, where he's been playing Odd Warrior a bunch on ladder, and he's pretty favoured in that matchup, he feels. He's got a very good score against the Death Rattle Hunter. So after this match is out of the way, that could be, if played correctly for Taiwan, the way to turn it around. Even then, having said that, I think it's still just looking very good for Singapore.
Yeah, and you start to see just already the difference in the decks with these mulligans, right? The Candle Shot, great. Cube and Hunter's Mark, a lot less great. And already just lost in the jungle Glowatron, Corridor Creeper just beats Hunter. You know, along with the hero power, like, they kind of just have no game versus it. There's no secrets, so you're not going to see Snake Trap, you're not going to see Explosive Trap, get that wide range value. The most you can realistically expect is a good Rexar, maybe a good Mossy Horror soon after, and combined with Death Rattles, but that is a lot of ifs and whens and buts.
And that's the problem. The Mossy Horror and Deathstalker Rexar are often just one turn too late, because they've already played Level Up, or they've already played Fungal Mancer, and then your cards don't do enough because you're just dead.
None will survive.
Hey, they're playing a Divine Favor.
It's an interesting inclusion, not off-scene. I think you were talking yesterday about
I
want to see that a bit more.
It just feels weird with all the control decks that there are right now that Divine Favor's just not played in terms of Paladin decks.
Maybe it's a little bit more of a regular Conquest setting card where you're expecting a field of control, whereas at global games you need to be much more
broad.
Broad, exactly. You need to have a game plan against everything.
It's one thing that I would love to see, but I don't know if it would work the way I would want it to.
Right.
Imagine Hearthstone in tournament, one deck format.
Okay.
Right, and that's it. What do the decks look like? Are they teched to try and beat everything, or are they completely narrow as they are now, and they just say, well, I'll lose some games? You know, it is interesting to see what would happen. Yeah. But this is what I'm talking about now. Like, great, there was just swing of the weapon, pretty much pass. Well, the Hunter's Mark killed the 1/3
to kill a 1/3.
Right, and look, well, now what? You're still a 1/1 behind this turn. Going to see a Terror Scale. Oh, good old Spider Bomb. Okay, Spider Bomb can sort of 1 versus 3, which is a decent card.
It's a surprisingly decent start, actually, for real here. I like the very liberal use of Hunter's Mark there. That is obviously not the intended use against most matchups, but a 1/3 outside of a Corridor Creeper is probably the scariest minion you're going to be seeing for a long time.
Yeah. Maybe. How are you feeling about the Sacred Maul? Hit face with the 1/1, hit the 2/2, then coin out Lost in the Jungle.
Oh, not great.
Because you also want to empty your hand for this Divine Favor to do anything.
2 minions would have died then, so Corridor Creeper isn't a possibility quite yet. Like, the fact that Sacred Maul is such a bad maul and Taunt is so useless.
That's why I'm leaning towards it. Yeah, just use it as a weapon. Yeah. Done. Because otherwise, do you really want to leave a Spider Bomb up? Oh, there's this way of really going deep, or wide, or tall, or short. I don't know what they're calling it anymore.
Just going all in on the board, kind of flooding your opponent with options. and saying one spider bomb is not good enough.
Sounds silly, but this is
However-
what I was worried about. Because also, although you'd
only-
imagine the bomb dies anyway,
Yeah.
you're only one turn away from a cube as well, and suddenly cube spider bombs can just decimate your board if it happens.
And this is one card off of a complete board kill here, I believe. 4 of them can be killed off on this turn.
I think you don't play dead though, right?
Okay.
Because if you look at this hand, Ziliax or cube and play dead,
How does
are
it
very
shake
powerful.
out? If you get coin Fungalmancered, what's your game plan then? It's not bad actually, is it? If you get
No,
coin,
because-
it clears the board still.
yeah, well,
Usually.
yeah, you'd have a 2-2 or a 3-1 or whatever left, depending on what happens. But yeah, I think you hold the play dead
Yeah.
because of this. This cube could win you the game. If you play Ziliax next turn and Ziliax doesn't quite die, or if something else lives, suddenly cube play dead on any minion. Suddenly you've got 3 3s and a 4 6.
And Crumpled's hand here is starting to look a little bit
Meager.
lackluster. Yeah, none of these cards do much of anything. Divine Favor is completely useless. Sacred Maul is the worst Maul. Baku the Moon Eater. This is like the worst hand you can have. No 1-drops, no power 5-drops.
So again, does it have to be a 1 and a 1 into these minions, and then the weapon to finish off the 3-3, and then play Corridor Creeper? Maybe coin out Hero Power as well.
That's what I'm looking at. I think coin Hero Power's fine.
Yeah,
Unless you want to set up for coin Vine Cleaver. Yeah, I guess this is...
I think you want stuff, because
Yeah, you need to
should be
start-
further ahead than you are right now.
Maybe this allows you to play Leroy next turn as well.
Also, if you draw Fungalmance, if you draw Level Up, all valid targets, because even 2 3-3s isn't bad for Level Up.
It's interesting he decided to give his Corridor Creeper taunt, because I believe he could have given either all of them, just the 1/1s, or just the Corridor Creeper taunt here.
I think he wants that, because nothing
Oh no, he
kills the
couldn't.
creep.
No, yeah. Oh, he could. Yeah, he could have done it any way around. I guess this is probably the way you want it, isn't it? Protects against Candle Shot, Ziliax.
Yeah, and also, again, fungal targets. You have 2 1/1s that can't actually be targeted unless they get like flanked striked, which, cool.
It's worth considering the other way, though, because the Corridor Creeper is the most valuable minion for you at the moment, so maybe you want to protect it with the 1/1s against the Hunter's Mark Candle Shot.
Already,
Although that's
already seen
unlikely.
one as well.
Yeah, yeah. Oof. Real clearly feeling it. Pretty hard here. Head in his hands, or on his knee even.
Now,
As he's wondering, am I allowed to just play Carnivorous Cube here? It's the best tempo play.
the decision is, do you, because you've gained some time, some wiggle room you don't normally have, do you actually slow play this? Like, that's one of the decisions. You could actually go greedy.
I think I like the cube here.
I think it's just the most solid all-round play. So then do you just like Leroy then?
Okay. Yeah, that's a consideration. You can value trade with your weapon and the 2/5, which gives you a decent-sized board.
Reporting for duty.
It's not bad.
Just gonna put the two attacks in.
I think if the raid leader hadn't been drawn, we would have seen that. But Leroy is just such an objectively bad card when played for board control. It's usually just a complete last resort. Wow, a lot of Death Rattle activations being drawn here for real, which is really not bad if he can snipe off the right target with the Spider Bomb.
There we go. No, that was a 50% chance of hitting something decent.
Yeah.
Okay, is this Maul any better? No, it still sucks. It's like, I just got rid of you.
Yeah.
Stop coming back.
But all of Singapore's woes will be turning around next turn when they can finally get rolling with the Vine Cleaver, which is just
I imagine
where the game plan really starts to come together.
you've got to wonder, who's blessing all of these Mauls? Is it like a huge just cabinet full of Mauls? Because it's like, this is the sacred Maul. And then it's like, oh,
Have
I've used
another
it, it's broke. Okay, we've got a backup. It's like, why do you have a backup? It can't be that sacred if there's like hundreds of them.
Sounds like a slightly dodgy cult, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's just a very bored priest on a production line of Mauls going, you are now sacred. You are now sacred. Just blessing each one. You're like, just clocks out and he's just like, ugh, done with this job. It's 9 to 5. At least Vine Cleavers have a purpose. To clean vines.
Cleave Vine.
Yeah, makes sense. You just sell them in a shop. You can go anywhere.
Any
Viney.
vines being
Yeah, you just cleave. You want to trim your garden? Get on it. Right. Do you want
to
a
be
sacred
particularly
ball?
good? Imagine if you're trimming your hedge and then all of a sudden these two dudes with giant hammers show up. It's like, you're right, mate.
Yeah, you'd be like, what's happened? No, they're the gardeners.
Oh, there. You swing with the vine cleaver and then sit back, relax, and they'll
they
do your
tidy
garden
it up,
for you.
yeah.
As still, Chinese Taipei are in a position where this game is not over. It's looking bad for them. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, and this does illustrate how bad of a matchup this is, considering how bad Singapore's hand has been this game, and they're still pretty far in the lead.
The cards on the left are 3 of the worst cards you can have before you're ending the game.
Yeah, if you look at the win rate for Odd Paladin against any matchup, the Mulligan win rate card, Baku is the worst, Leroy is the second worst every time.
I am surprised that Ziliax has played.
Really? You want to get rid of that raid leader pretty badly.
But like the only difference there is there'd be a 1-1, but you'd have a 3-6 on the board that effectively has taunt versus a 3-2 that has taunt.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you're not dead from like 19 that turn, right? Or 18, whatever he's at.
I think he wants to play Howmaster Short on the same turn as something else.
Right.
Like if he draws an egg, he can go Shore, egg, play dead on the next turn. It was close though, I agree. Because if he plays Shore and doesn't get any rush value and it dies,
that's a lot of
really
damage
bad.
though.
That's really bad.
That's 6 damage going into him.
Yeah. But just Vine Cleaver clears it up, and Chinese Taipei will definitely be expecting Vine Cleaver next turn because of how mediocre Singapore's plays it.
Okay. Rexar.
Yeah, you really want that Rexar.
Hoggers.
Oh, but he has to turn down the Mossy Horror in order to get it. But even then, I just don't think it's a decision here.
Also, there's a point where you consider, egg. I do have Play Dead and Houndmaster Shore.
And it's like, in the bud there.
Yeah. Or I can just clear the board and give myself a win rate that is higher than 0.
And now this game somehow has actually flipped around pretty drastically.
But like I said, right at the start, it was less what the Hunter does and more the Paladin's draw has to suck.
Yeah, which it has done.
Which it did, which is why we're in this spot right now. My Singapore are in this spot right now.
Reporting for duty.
But still, Singapore, unless Chinese Taipei can mop up this board very quickly, are just one level up away from probably locking out the game.
Right.
It could still go very much either way. Imagine if we were to see a Bloatbat with Charge, or with Taunt, or a Cave Hydra.
Almost just any taunt lifesteal minion would be absurd. Any high health taunt minion would be absurd.
Basically, you take Crane's guide to Rexar that he posted on Twitter the other day of just pick the Scale Hide. It's probably the right option.
Right. Yeah, one of my favorite ones, I think I told you this one about it, is Life Drinker Scale Hide. Because when you play it, you heal for 6.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Like, Beetle, okay. It's one of the cheapest and has some kind of life gain.
Yeah, yeah. It's better than Hyena because you just don't have any beasts.
And definitely better than Pterodax.
Ooh, there we go. That's not bad.
I think you go for... Wait.
You can go for the Patriarch.
Hang on, what?
No, yeah, I think take the Scale Hide.
Yeah, I was working out what you could take to get to Leroy, but that pesky Divine Shield is frustrating.
Well, you can get to it this way if you wanted to.
Right, yeah, I meant like without the minion.
Right.
If you could get to it with the 1/1s.
Yeah.
So if you do go for it, do you actually just play dead as well?
Or just to heal for 3. Oh. But the play dead could be so good, not only with a card from your deck, but also just with a beast you discover. If you were to make a Bloatbat and then just play dead that, that is insane. I think the potential upside is too good to just throw it away.
I wonder how good just slamming Baku is.
I think it's probably the way
just
to
drop it down, Hunter. You've already used Hunter's Mark.
Yeah.
You're working off dodgy beasts. Like, do you really have something that kills an 8 health minion?
It's looking unlikely, especially as both Spider Bombs have already hit the board and died for Taipei. And you don't need to worry about flipping the health on your Leroy because you've seen Rexar, it's safe at 2 health, you would expect. Apart from flanking strike, but if they're flanking strike, you still have a lot of damage. Still a whole lot of heal that comes through for real here, showing the power of lifesteal on an important to kill minion.
As a strike, a la flanking.
You could even give Rush to the Wolf with Houndmaster Shaw if that was so desired. Ooh.
Emerald Reaver
I'm
seems fine.
tempted to take Emerald Reaver, yeah. Nesting Rock just feels too expensive to me.
Nesting Rock would be fine if there was minions on the board,
Yeah.
but because you can't guarantee the taunt effect.
Echo Rush with... If it was the Emerald Reaver that was taken, you have to deal 3 damage to your face if you were to play all of them. Yeah.
You can kill the 7, the 8 health minion if you took that. That's all you could do to take another, what, 10?
Yeah, none of these options are particularly good, and it was the
Good
Emerald
go.
Reaver that was taken in the end.
I think this is the better turn overall. Next turn you can play 3-4-2.
It's not bad. It's a way to pop up this board.
Yeah.
The damage you deal to yourself is obviously not perfect, but the damage you deal to your opponent is not negligible. You are starting to home in a position where, unless Crumpled clears the board every turn, he will just be dying to these zombies. So we could see maximum, I think, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15 damage with a Void Ripper going to face on this turn if it was so desired.
Right.
Which is not bad, but I think you do have to be very afraid of just dying on the following turn. You know King Crush is in the deck, which at any point could burst from Katharina or from hand to close out the game.
Yeah, there's... Even just rush minions anyway can cause a huge issue.
Yes.
It can allow the 2 minions on board to go face.
Yeah, Void Ripper feels like the way to go this time.
Need to get it done.
I think the main consideration there wasn't do we clear off this board, it was do we play Divine Favor. They could have foregone the Vine Cleaver on this turn to draw an extra 2 cards, maybe get themselves Taunt to close it to the level up. I think this is probably a little better though because it sets up lethal.
Right. It might just be a hard decision to build a beast, obviously first, see what happens, but then you might just have to Devil Saw into that Baku.
I think you might have to triple zombies to
and
with
kill the
Emerald
3/3?
Reaver. You can clear off both the big minions with the Baku and the Void Ripper.
You get put to 6 though.
Yes,
Oh, you
that
get
is
put
true.
6 anyway. Never mind. The hard part here is if you triple zombies, you cannot build a beast, and build a beast might work out better.
The other benefit of this play, though, is you bring your opponent down to 8 health, which means King Crush
True.
off the top is lethal. And that's actually quite a big deal here, for real.
What a weird game.
What a very odd game indeed. Oh, okay, this is an interesting way to
This
start
is
it.
better. Your health should go down.
Yeah, because they're never clearing off this cube anyway, so it still sets
Yeah.
up the lethal off the top. Okay, yeah, I can get behind this.
Well, we're going to see Divine Favor to draw a card, the worst Arcane Intellect. As there's no reason not to play these 2 1-drops, there's no reason not to draw a card.
Chinese Taipei,
And the most importantly, this is 8 mana, which means there's still a level up opportunity on
which
this board.
would be just nuts here.
Blessing of Might.
Blessing of Might. That's 7, 8, 11
3.
damage.
Yeah,
3 off.
3.
so close here. And now 6 damage off lethal for real. I think the only out for him here to win the game on the spot is King Crush. Witchwood Grizzly, however, is a fantastic stalling mechanism.
Life Drinker, not bad.
Or if he takes
Not going to
Owl.
be the Grizzly. I think it's still lethal through just Grizzly. Because if you Grizzly, there's 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 with the minions on the left. And then there's 4 attacks. 1 gets killed by the cube, but then there's still 3 to go face.
And I think the grimace there from Real was he was saying, if we pick Owl and get Snowflipper Penguin, we can play that on this turn for a silence. He was actually offered that, and but did not pick it. There, however, is level up, which is going to close out the game, bringing Singapore up to 2-0 in this incredibly close game.
Yeah, that was insane. That was much tougher than it needed to be for Singapore. And I think you see the relief as well. They're like, okay, we won the game we definitely should have won. It was a little bit spicy, a little bit dicey, but there were no big power plays from Chinese Taipei as well. We saw that there were some issues in terms of, although they had some answers and they made the game go long, they got the Rexar from the tracking. After that was, yeah, they healed a bit, but there was no turn that flipped the switch, right, and made them go in. And especially with the Cube having to trade into, say, a 4-attack minion there to stop that lethal through the Grizzly, it means that they were never pushing the damage themselves to win the next turn anyway.
Yeah, Rexar was the closest they came to that swing turn, I think, where it looks like it could have turned around. And, you know, maybe a couple of different zombies they could have got there. But I think the main thing I want to highlight there for Taipei is while we saw how jubilant and excited Singapore were, Real just looked absolutely miserable throughout that whole series. He was just head in hand, so close to getting through because he knows one more loss in a game of Hearthstone and he's out of the global games.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's 2-0 up for Singapore. As you said, Derek, there may only be one more game left, but we're just going to step away for just a minute, so we'll be right back with potentially the final game of this series. This could be the final game of this series between Singapore and Chinese Taipei. All on the line here as a spot at BlizzCon is what the winner will get. And currently Singapore up 2-0 and Katsu Curry's going in the Hunter versus Chinese Taipei's Odd Warrior. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, this is a matchup that I'm very glad that we're getting to see because it has been a pretty hot debate in the Hearthstone community, both on Twitter and in-game between the practice groups, where traditionally the idea was it's just a free win for Death Rattle Hunter against Odd Warrior. You have too much value, you win in fatigue, you win in tempo early on. Every aspect of the game is going in your favor. But I think what people have started to realize is with the modern Odd Warrior builds with usually 2 Iron Beak Owls, 2 Mind Control techs, you can get yourself in a position where you silence away the cubes. If they go too wide on the board, you steal a couple of their minions. Super Collider gets so much value in this matchup, clearing up minion after minion. And unless they get Deathstalker Rexar on curve, it can be the case where you just outvalue them, and in the end, you win not necessarily in fatigue, but just on board as the Odd Warrior with your tricks like Dynamatic, Faceless, and Mind Control tech.
That's it, yeah, and just a quick note on the list is the 1 Savannah High main list, so we're not going to see a Devil Saw like we saw in the last game. But for me, there's 1 MCT as well. But for me, yeah, it's kind of weird. I feel like Boom is a problem for Hunter because all these mechs that they then generate can then rush, which, you know, cheats to a certain extent onto the board, where Odd Warrior, or at least Control Warriors of old, have always not really done anything on the board and just remove. But as you said, they have much wider toolbox right now in terms of what they can actually get done.
And for the moment for Singapore, it doesn't matter how generally people feel the matchup works out. In this particular game, they really have not found the cards they are looking for at all. I know you're more of a Death Rattle Hunter expert than I am, but I think we can both agree this hand sucks.
It really does, yeah. There's a couple of things that could really change it round. You know, a cube and a Death Rattle proc suddenly makes this high main an absolute nightmare to deal with because you play it either gets cleaned up or it gets cubed on demand. That's call. So making multiple high mains is the most joyous thing a human can do, I feel. Above everything else, you know, marriage, what's that? And all, it's all about just duping high mains. That's what makes someone really feel alive. And it's one thing that all the removal in the world doesn't really clear a cubed high main. You know, it's so awkward, so many layers to go through.
Well, all the hard removal in the world doesn't. Mind Control taking away the cube or silencing that cube all of a sudden does do a slightly better job. And this is what Control Warriors have been lacking since the dawn of Hearthstone, because traditionally they have not run silence. It's been a very niche tech in Control Warriors.
Why silence something when you can just kill it?
Exactly, yeah. You have such good removal tools, especially with the likes of Sleep with the Fishes, back in the olden Warrior days with the glory days way back when, and Fiery War Axe when it was at 2 mana. But nowadays, because you've cut your available card pool in half with Odd Warrior, there is room for the Iron Beak Owls because they are just very, very powerful in the right situation.
And this is also a weird feeling for Death Rattle Hunters, being behind on board. You know, like right now, it's silly. It's only a Stonehill, but it's annoying, and now we're going to see Stonehill number 2, which was generated from Stonehill number 1, and then potentially now Sunwalker as well. And it's just frustrating because these little attacks, these little annoyances, get in the way of, say, your 5/5s, your high mains, just hitting face and piling on the pressure.
And it's exactly what the warrior wants to do, because the more time they buy themselves with these little minions, the more health they will have to be clearing off things with Super Collider, the more time they'll have to leverage their brawls, because you'll have to overcommit to get through their taunts.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Do you expect to see it on this turn?
Oh, yeah.
Coin Savannah High Main next turn, something like that? Whew.
You're saying all the right things to me now, Darren. Or you rip a Play Dead off the top and cube the Houndmaster and Play Dead.
Oh.
Because cubed Houndmasters get awfully silly in the best of ways.
Yeah, gives me the tinglies.
The frustration here, maybe not too bad, maybe it is that we can see Dynomatic is one of the most OP cards in the game.
Yes.
Because you get into a mindset where, oh, it doesn't hurt my cards. Well, it does, but because of the hit with the candle shot, it means that a lot of this health on board can go away if they trade into the into short.
And Katsukari was definitely going to be discussing the potential of Dynomatic, because it works out perfectly here. If Tom wants to double trade and Dynomatic, I believe that's exactly 5 health on the board. Dynomatic clears everything up. Which, you know, is not that bad. They have to kill off both of their Stonehills to deal with this. Tom 60229 doesn't really have a choice, because Houndmaster Short is so devastatingly strong. You have to kill it off, really.
If this isn't the time to coin out that that high main, then I don't know when it is, because now there is the Q Play Dead. But yeah, I think Dynomatic is one of the... I don't know if someone's tracking these stats, and if it's even a stat, but the flip of who is winning in a game feels like it's on turn 5 against Dynomatic very often, because not only do you clear most boards, you end up with a 3-4.
Yeah.
So you have the initiative, and to the extent where Team Singapore are going to kill it, and now they're going to ask Chinese Taipei, can they kill this? Or are they just going to leave it up? Because, again, Cube Play Dead on almost anything is a bit of a frustration to deal with, because not only is the cube, yes, you can silence it, but if you play dead, you already have gain from that. You double up on the minions.
That's true. This is, however, a much less appetizing cube Play Dead target than a Savannah High Main would be.
Great versus aggro, though. When you duplicate those Ziliaxes, it's just, see, this deck's so much fun. I love it so much. It's so sick.
It's funny against Odd Warrior, where you're just allowed to do whatever you want, because their pressure is nothing. Against the Odd Paladin that we saw, it was pretty miserable just having to play dead your Spider Bombs to kill off 1/1s and stuff like that.
And the only worry for me now is of making the Ziliax play and not the high main is if you played high main now, well, there's 2 minions on board, which means Super Collider is always a worry, because that's the way Warrior just cheats and is able to just clear more minions with a 1-attack weapon.
Yeah.
What is this thing? And I believe there is no weapon removal in this version. There is 1 MCT, 1 Giggling Inventor, Ziliax.
You see the Gluttonous Ooze in and out of Rattle.
Yeah. I personally like playing it, especially in tournament form when you're expecting a lot of weapon druids.
Yeah.
Okay, coin going to be used to get this Hunter's Mark on, and this is what I like. This is it, just 1 high main on the board.
Yeah, no Super Collider
Enjoy,
can deal with you. Yeah.
Because bear in mind, Chinese Taipei have not pressed that hero power once this game.
Have they not pressed it? They pressed it once.
Oh, sorry, they pressed it once.
Turn 2, yeah.
Which is weird.
And then turn 3, 4, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So it means that there's no Silent Shield Slam available, which is super important.
Or even just Shield Slam, because Shield Slam alone, they don't really want to silence the high main. Just leaving you with 2/2s, you don't want to cube those, that's rubbish. Whereas this, that is a cube player right there.
So sick.
Doesn't even
you just snap it. You just don't consider it. If you get this opportunity, just do it, whether it's right or wrong. No, I don't care, Darren. I don't care you're going to say Owl. Don't care you're going to say anything else.
I'm going to say Mind Control Tech. It makes, what, 5 minions on the board?
She'd hit cubes too,
Yeah, so it's unlikely they steal the cube with the 2 high mains inside. But if they do steal the cube with 2 high mains inside,
Just cube another high main now.
probably lost that game.
My question is, if you're going to play around MCT all game, do you ever win?
Well, it's interesting you say that.
Okay.
USA played a very beautifully played game, in my opinion, of this exact matchup, Death Rattle Hunter against Odd Warrior, where the whole game, they did have Deathstalker Rexar on curve, I believe, so they had the liberty to play it a little bit slower, but they never made more than 3 minions for the entire game. It was just the perfect balance point of just enough threat on the board, never overextending, never giving MCT targets, and they won by miles. It wasn't even close.
Yeah, if those minions are giant zombies, then
It's a different
I'm with
story.
you.
It's a different story, I agree.
So silence into that's him.
Just
brawl.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's fine. You are likely to be facing down just a few 2-2s most of the time.
If a high main survives though.
I would like to see that for Singapore. They probably won't feel comfortable with cubing the second high main lest they meet the other owl. Maybe they just take the risk. But this hand, say this turn, Brawl comes down, there's 1 high main left alive, and Katsukari cubes it next turn, and it's met with an owl, their hand does pretty much nothing then.
Right.
It's very, very low pressure indeed.
Ooh, gonna go with Flurry instead. Guaranteeing that will
Kill.
not happen.
Yeah.
Still though, this is now I feel Katsukuri can, funnily enough, take a slower approach to the game. Because you still push in, what, 8 damage, 10 with the hero power this turn? Like,
I think he's indicating with this play, he's taking a faster approach to this game. He wants to get this game rolling real quick. Because by playing both trackings, he's so far ahead in Fatigue. Fatigue is not even a consideration for him anymore. He has to win really, really quickly, which is usually what you have to do when Deathstalker Rexar is in your bottom 12, 10 cards, whatever it is at this point.
so I think
So he's going to want to play quick.
I think now even, say you go for King Crush. Cube onto a 2-2 after it's attacked is fine.
Yeah, that's not bad.
You've attacked and you can hero power anyway. You hit him for 10, that's a third of his health this turn. You cube 1 to stop brawls and reckless flurries again. Fine, like, when are you playing cube this game if you don't play it now?
Later, when you're not giving your opponent good MCT value, I think is probably the idea.
I'm just wondering, do you want the game to go later then? Because if so, would you have played like this? I don't know. You've took King Crush instead of play dead.
Yeah.
So you're not taking value approaches, you're taking the damage approach.
Yeah, and also just playing the tracking at all. Like, I agree at first glance, it seems like the easiest slam tracking in the world. They did play it.
You had nothing in hand,
Yeah,
more or less.
The hand didn't do much. Because you don't want defensive cards like Spider Bomb and Giggling. You want offensive cards like King Crush, Deathstalker Rexar for value, Katharina for board presence. But I'm not sure if it was necessarily that easy. If Taipei decided to go big on the board, like we see here with a Dire Horn or a Beryllium Nullifier that they get off Omega Assembly, something like that, you have Spider Bomb. You can deal with that relatively easily. But if you start digging into your deck with tracking, I do just start to question if they will be able to close out the game before fatigue sets in because of just how much armor Warrior has.
Right.
It's just so difficult to do.
So now I think they have to go for the 50-50, right?
Well, they can go...
Because either way they can clear the board.
Strike.
It's just one way they can clear the board way better.
Oh.
Spider Bomb Cube, let's go.
What if they just flanking strike the 2-2 and chill? Like, or just play
they-
Spider Bomb?
And not attack into the 6-9?
Yeah.
I don't know, I
Do you want to
heart the
sacrifice
cards.
this whole board? Like, what
But
is
you
this-
might not need to. It's only 50% chance you do. And you end up with a cube with 2 Spider Bombs in it and a Candle Shock.
Quickly.
But it's so bad if it misses. Like you say, it's not that bad. If this 5 cost minion just clears off your whole board, that's the best case scenario. And instead gonna move aside from Spider Bomb nonsense completely here and just throw down King Crush, saying you have to remove this if you want to carry on in the game.
But the odds are that they just can.
Yeah,
That's what
it should
scares
be
me.
pretty easy. It was correct positioning. If they played it in the middle, that would have been awful because Super Collider would have been a definite kill by attacking one of the 2 attack minions.
Also as well, we can see that Tom can just remove all query. He can shield slam, can flurry, can just shield slam, play the Dire Horn, and just say, well, you couldn't really get through the first Dire Horn that well. Can you get through the second one with 2 2-2s?
Playing another flurry is pretty big overkill.
I agree. I'm just saying that there's so many
The ability
options.
is there.
Oh,
And
what
now,
do you know, Derek?
Well,
the
no,
world
no.
champion has spoken.
I'm not saying it's the bad play.
Oh, here comes the backpedaling now that the champ said something.
Well, it was that or take the 50-50 with Super Collider. This is probably more consistent because you don't want to be taking risks here.
Right.
Thanks for throwing me under the bus, by the way.
Any time, friend. This is the main thing I've learned from Sol's casting with me.
You got to get in there first.
Oh, yeah. No one can hurt you if you go in first.
Wow, the English way.
Yeah.
But Katsukari, while his style of play has got him way behind in fatigue, that's not even in consideration anymore, as I said. His aggressive play with King Crush has removed quite a lot of the removal from his opponent's hand. So maybe now, with the few remaining turns he has left until he finds Rexar, he can mount an offensive enough of a board to just push for lethal because the removal won't be there.
Right. We are on board now with the Spider-Man getting gobbled up by the cube. And now it's less about the cube having anything mind-blowing in it, and more about it having things in it to hit face again with.
Or just being a 4/6, just
right,
chipping away the armor every turn.
This is just a nice death rattle minion that leaves stuff behind, you know. Security rover.
That's what you focus on there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because Mechathune is how this game is won, Derek. You know, Chinese Taipei are going to switch strategies and go for the Mechathune win condition by just trying to kill this cube with a Super Collider 6 times.
Yeah. Now I'm seeing the lines. Galvanizer off the next one, reduce it by 1. Mechathune Shield Slam. That's the win con.
Okay. It's a pretty good one. On this mark?
Yeah. You've seen 2 Direhorn Matriarchs now, so there's probably not all too much else that you want to be hitting with the Hunter's Mark.
And also, this could just be a pain. This like security rover is so annoying for Hunter to deal with.
So, Hunter's Mark, Candle Shot to kill it off, Flanking Strike to deal with the minion, push face.
4/6 and a 3/3.
Makes 2 minions for Super Collider, which is not good, but can you really win this game by just having 1 minion on board for the rest of the game? Well, no, because it just cancels out with their hero power directly.
And also as well, the...
Maybe instead they hold back the Flanking Strike and go Giggling, and just take out the 2/3 with their
cube.
Yeah, it's close.
But then we're not playing around mind.
That is true. It's only a one-of in Taiwan's deck, but it's still a consideration.
I like this. Because like Collider doesn't kill off the cube anyway.
Yeah.
So enjoy these hits. You have to tank. You know what I mean? Like keep tanking this damage to face. Fine by me. Starrick's trying to destroy the set right now.
Something just fell off. All right, we'll ignore it.
Don't know if we're live anymore, to be honest. We'll just continue as if we are. We can talk about Hearthstone. It's fine.
So now defensive maneuvers will have to be made by Tom60229 if he wants to survive against this onslaught, which looks like it could be... There's not enough mana for like the hero power, owl, shield slam, all that stuff. Just clearing up what he can and relying on the hero power to keep him alive for the moment. King Crush has already been used, so the surprise factor isn't really there for Singapore, but this is still just a good amount of consistent damage that means if they get Rexar anytime soon, Bittertide Hydra with a boar, or anything with the Tundra Rhino or the Tiger could just deliver a lethal over a turn or 2.
You can probably hear that. I'm sorry, but that's paper attacking me. Just to remind you as well, there are 2 spider bombs still in this cube, so this cube is going to spurt out some extra minions if and when it does die. I do like the face push.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
I think Giggs is fine. Ryan.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
We discovered this at playoffs.
I mean, I have heard of that name, and that's about as far as my football knowledge goes. But, yeah.
Pretty good football player. Getting on now, though. I don't think he plays anymore. Welsh. I'm just giving you random facts.
Also human.
yeah. Has a first and second name, maybe a middle name too, unlike myself, who does not.
As Chinese Taipei are starting to have to actually just scrabble to clear up this board.
What, make some kind of word? Right,
maybe
okay,
not my best choice of word.
8.
While Singapore are
card is just the
bingoing them
left.
to death.
Yeah. Singapore empties their hand this turn, which they cannot. They would have had Uno. Is that how Uno works? I think I've only played it a couple of times. You try and empty your hand, right?
Yeah, but you say Uno when you have one card left, not when you have one.
Why
None.
wouldn't you have one card?
Uno means one. Like when you have one card left, you say Uno because it means like I'm
So it
about
tells
to win.
everyone. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But can you then play that card or not? Is it when you
Yeah, that's how
play
you
the
win.
second card?
When
You say Uno.
When you
or-
have one card left in your hand, you have to say Uno, and if you don't, you have to like draw a card or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as a punishment for not remembering.
Okay.
But
I play online.
th-
So I've got no IRL friends, Derek. So I've not really done the game does it for me. It's like Hearthstone.
it's one of those famous Raven sidetracks that I'm getting to experience
Yeah.
for the first time now.
Don't lie to anyone, you're enjoying it, aren't you?
Yeah.
You can admit it. Oh,
Quickly.
did you get that? Okay. So he's going to duplicate multiple bombs now, which means the premise of staying small on board is kind of out the window now.
Falling by the wayside.
Yeah, Singapore just want to win the game.
Yep.
And having 2 bombs that can just kill minions isn't really that bad.
So that means now it's going to have to be something like Hero Power Owl on the Cube Brawl, or Hero Power Shield Slam the Cube Brawl, or sorry, yeah, I guess you can just trade through, then go for a hero afterwards. Yeah, this is a nice
And-
way of doing it.
You are extremely unlikely to have any minions on the board. You're actually
That is
0% chance if you're the warrior to have any minions alive after this run.
That's true. Hopefully the Hunter has none either.
Oh,
But
okay.
That's a very good outcome
Yeah.
for Tom.
Do they all? Oh, I'd love if that frame bot, boom, 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 just each bomb just hit it. It's like you will get dead. Now, that's going up to 18, and this almost, I feel, has to be Rex off the top.
Yeah, they're starting to pull out of range. Just none of the good minions have been found for Singapore.
Yeah.
We're seeing-
Spider Bomb, Terror Scale does not go face.
Yep. I believe is that every beast now. One more Witchwood Grizzly in the deck for Katharina.
Yes.
I believe. So Katharina is still, a decent draw at this point, although it does bring them one card closer to fatigue.
Probably
But
more valuable as a 6/6 now. Like to actually just deal damage at this point, and they're what we've all been waiting for. The Mecha-Thin win condition has occurred. It's a bit better though.
Yeah, the egg's starting to be found. But I don't even think you can go for the Terror Scale on this turn. You kind of have to go Spider Bomb Terror Scale.
Would you not just play all 3 anyway?
Yeah, I think you...
Right.
Would you even play all 3? You're playing
Well-
into Mind Control Tech again then. And if he steals the Witchwood Grizzly, you can kind of just say goodbye to the game.
Right, I just think that if you don't play all 3, this egg's just never having any impact on the game.
That's
ever.
fine. What is it going to do in this
Well,
game?
if there's, is there still Flurry?
There's still a
Right.
Brawl. 2 flurries have been used, 1 Brawl left. And your opponent has demonstrated they probably don't have Mind Control Tech at this point, or they would have played it at some point, because you have gone
There was a
over
cube
the 4
steal
million threshold.
potential, wasn't there?
Yeah, so
Now the
saying
choice. There we go.
they realise how dire their position is. They just got to go for it. I'm not certain I agree with this play, because it gives them a chance to just lose on the spot.
Oh no, this is great. The Collider does nothing.
That's true.
The Collider gives you a 5/5.
And I guess if the Witchwood Grizzly does get stolen... Oh, no, sorry. If the Grizzly gets stolen, then your
You have the
Spider
bomb.
Bomb could clear it up. Their Super Collider couldn't quite deal with everything. So, yeah, I guess even in the worst case of Grizzly being stolen,
The bomb gets stolen where you
It's
still have an
fine.
egg on the board.
Yeah. it's not bad.
Yeah.
And they kind of have to start making risky plays anyway, where they just have to say, okay, they can't have this card, because if they do, the game's over.
Unless they draw Rexar, this game
Yes.
becomes very linear in the fact that we need to just throw everything we have at him
Yeah.
and hope it's enough to get there somehow. Oh my.
1 wasn't enough.
What an extreme. So we have underpowered Steambot,
Yeah.
Meat Wagon, and then Mecha-Thun, number 2. Oh? Oh?
Yeah, just trying to get rid of the
Okay,
Spider Bomb, I
okay.
guess, 100% of the time. Obviously, that's the worst hit half the time than when you hit the 3/3. But if you give them a 5/5 as well, that is so bad.
Right. Because after that, there'll be no way to deal with it, even with the Dynamatic, because there's no guarantee it would kill off the 5/5.
Oh, Mossy is
Cheeky!
a very respectable draw here, just to be breaking through the Steambot. Like,
Yeah.
The only card in your hand, you have to play it. It doesn't really
And
line
you
up
gain
any
a
better.
5/5.
Yeah.
I'm okay with this, Darren. You push 5 and put a 2/7 and a 5/5 on board.
Does then mean that Ziliax into Dynamatic next turn would not be able to clear the board definitely?
Yeah, I
So
mean,
that's
you have
fine.
7 health, right?
Yeah,
This-
yeah.
The Mossy Aura is just a great overall tool.
Ziliax Faceless would probably be the play to deal with a couple of the minions. Or probably the 5/5. But it is still a lot of potential damage that's going to be coming through that Tom needs to find a way to mitigate, lest he just face lethal.
I will say this game can accelerate very quickly for Team Singapore. 4 cards left. One's Grizzly, one's Katharina, which pulls,
Yeah.
obviously, the Grizzly. One's Rexar.
Yeah.
That's insane. Those are 2 good draws out of 4.
And one's Keleseth.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Keleseth.
Well, that's a meme. Okay.
Keleseth and Rexar and Katharina as well.
Oh,
all
okay,
bottom
okay.
4 cards. Like the 3 best cards in this matchup are all bottom 4.
And it made this draw a 50-50 as to
Yeah.
whether it was good or bad.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of funny. But now Rexar's live. It's unfortunate that this, unfortunate for Singapore, that this combination can happen as Tom drinks out of his Murloc mug, which I appreciate. It's a pretty cool mug. But this was about as good as it was going to get. This was better than Katharina, I think, because Katharina's still fine next turn. This means that because there's 0 mana to play with this turn, Katsukuri and Team Singapore can focus on what's the biggest, baddest minion they can make, potentially even for 10 mana. You don't normally want to go for that, but still, if the option's there. Corpse Widow does mean that Katharina can be played alongside.
Yeah, that's
if Corpse
true.
Widow's cheeking. Yeah, Corpse Widow Dire Mole means you can Corpse Widow and Katharina. No,
No,
you can't. I can't
yeah,
have together.
no.
Mind.
Not quite, but you just take the biggest minion and with a
Yeah.
stealth attached onto it, that is not half bad.
Mechathune.
But it's just not quite good enough as it currently stands. Tom60229 finally turning up the pressure and should be closing out this game in the next couple turns.
Wait.
Okay, maybe it was one of the Grizzlies had already been drawn.
Oh, wait. Didn't Keleseth get tracking away?
Oh, did Keleseth get tracked
I think
away?
so,
Oh,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
okay, my
Because remember, we've lost a lot of cards from
Right,
tracking,
yeah.
so it's harder to keep track of
Very
what's left
nice.
in the deck. Bear Shark always looks good to me. Bear Shark Snapjaw. Playable this turn, untargetable. Decent size.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So what, 6/10? 6/10 untargetable?
It just gets value traded by Mechathune though. Like the 10/10 body is what's killing you at this point.
Oh.
Your Katsukuri.
Cobra time then.
Which tracks to follow?
Get all poisonous on this board. Still playable this turn.
Worth pointing out now, as well as this game is taking, a long while to come to its conclusion, that if Chinese Taipei win this game, they are extremely favoured in the next game of this series with Aggro Mage up against the Quest Rogue. So this, if they win it, as it's looking like they currently will, could be the start of a pretty big turnaround.
Yeah, I think Singapore really wanted this to end, not only because it qualified for them for BlizzCon,
Yeah.
but because their other matchups, as you said, are
Pretty
not
bad.
great. They really wanted to be like, okay, just win this one and then let's just move on. Let's forget about it. This is just straight up 16 damage this turn.
Could even see a Faceless on the Mechathune
Yeah.
here if we wanted to.
3
Oh.
Mechathunes, 1 game.
Oh, love it.
Oh,
This is just a cool board. This is what really the win condition of Mechathune is. All that nonsense with the death rattle, you don't care about that.
It's a
just a
10-10.
10/10, yeah.
funnily enough, no Dr. Boom as well. We talked a lot about the lacking of Hunter cards. But wait, are we just wrong?
Yeah, I think we might have
So they
been
lost the
confused by tracking
Grizzly
a little bit.
in tracking too? 'Cause Katharina wasn't in tracking, I don't think. Whatever, let's find out if the game
Either
comes to
way.
it. Poisonous Rush? Okay. Quite an expensive option though. This card just seems like a bad card, Derek. When I saw it announced,
not
I
a
was
great
like,
card.
5 mana, 1/3 Poisonous
Yeah,
Rush.
if you can get it with a Cave Hydra, then you're usually a bit happier. But
Yeah, I agree.
but I'm just struggling to see any way that Singapore can stabilize on this board. Too much damage coming through. They cannot deliver anywhere near lethal.
Wait,
Which tracks to
No.
follow?
did Singapore draw their MCT? Oh, I wanted MCT Mechathune. They're already at fatigue.
No.
Play the long game, but the long game was not to be as Tom, the world champ, clapping himself. So you know what? I can't hear anyone clap. I'll make sure I do get one because I deserve it. And he's going to take that game along with a team at Chinese Taipei, and it means that they are going to start fighting back now. As you said, these matchups lean a little bit better over to their side of the game, I'd say.
Yeah, an interesting showcase of that matchup is, as I often find, it doesn't actually get through to Fatigue if the Warriors winning that game. They usually just win on board, because all the while, in the first 2 or 3 turns that you're making Zombeasts, it's usually a little bit unimpressive. You don't have enough mana to go for the full power of Zombeasts. Yep. Taking 2 away every turn can be quite expensive. And winning with Megathunes there, although it seems like a bit of a meme, that's usually roughly the way it goes. They just dominate the board, and then you can't pull it back in time before they're just killing you.
Right, let's take a look at this next matchup, one that should be over relatively quickly one way or the other, mainly because if the mage doesn't get there quick, well, he draws his deck, so then it's going to end it, you know, whichever way. It's going to be Shaxi piloting the mage and Chaos on the rogue, and again, I struggle to live in a world where the rogue can get a win, although all these quest rogue fanatics, cultists, or players, you know, choose whichever one's relevant, tell me that they can beat anything with this deck.
I feel like they say they can win any matchup except this one. Okay. Like, they say Odd Rogue, fine, Zoo, fine, you know, we can get there. Even the aggro hunters, whatever, they can get the job done. This one, however, it's like the deck was just made to beat Quest Rogue. It's got too much aggression with the minions early on. The secrets can be very powerful if you can deny, with the counterspell, maybe a Vanish, something like that. Or if you can just snipe off one of their minions with a explosive runes as well. That's just more damage you've got through to face. It makes their quest difficult to complete. And then even if that doesn't get there, Giggling Inventor doesn't win them the game because you just go over the top of it with your burn spells.
Exactly, yeah. For me, it's the fact that most of their minions, even the higher cost ones, have low health. So runes is just 4 or 5 damage every single time. It's insane. And it's one of the matchups where I feel the minion start for Mage, although is of course the best start, isn't 100% needed because the rogue doesn't do much onto the board early enough anyway.
It does have to be either supremely powerful delay tactics for the rogue, where they manage to mitigate any damage coming through to face at all in the early turns through minions, or they need an incredibly early quest activation where they just go prep quest on turn 4 or 5, and then they're playing a bunch of scale hides, healing back up, stopping all the damage coming through. Either way, it's pretty unlikely, I find, for the rogue to be able to stop the damage and heal up afterwards. It's just too much stuff they have to do at the same time.
And I think the players are just getting ready to go into the game now. So as we said, this is for a place in the grand finals, joining all the other teams that have qualified so far. Today, we have 4 matches for you, and that means 4 qualifying teams, and then that is going to round out the phase of top 16. And then we're going to finish up at BlizzCon with these finals. But let's kick it off here. Shaxi going to be on this aggro mage as the pilot, but the full power of Chinese Taipei team is behind him. And then the same can be said for Chaos, who's off for Singapore.
Yeah, as we saw, similar to last week, seems like Chaos, sadly, on his own on the Singapore team. Probably.
I feel you. Yeah. I understand what it's like.
Similar to last week, maybe has to be up early for school, as I believe he is a student. But either way, if this matchup goes the way it's expected to, he is going to be up at night, I would imagine, stressing over this matchup.
Yeah, or get to go to bed relatively early, because this one's going to be over quick. And he's just like, you know what? I'm going to bed, guys. Enjoy. It's either going to be in celebration or misery, but one way or the other, it'll be done. And this opening hand looks pretty good to me from Shaxi. Missing the mana worm, but bad. Okay. But often there's not a great way to deal with even a Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Yeah, clearly wondering if he should coin it out to play around Dagger deckhand, because he does want this to be able to connect to face. If he does coin it out, just Cinderstorm next turn is fine. You want that damage to go face every time, and you're already getting close to the point where it is too much damage coming through for the mage to be able to fight back. After turn 2, it seems insane.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, isn't it?
Because there is just no other play for Caius other than Dagger. If he plays the deckhand, he needs that to charge into the Sorcerer's Apprentice to have a chance here, really. But he's deciding to tank the hit, take this out over 2 turns, which I do not think is going to work out all too well for him.
It's the good old-fashioned way, but it means he's going to take another 3. He's going to take this Cinderstorm. It would be weird to me if Cinderstorm wasn't played. You don't want Cinderstorm hitting random minions in this matchup. Sometimes you do. you need it to actually chunk through some minions.
Yeah, get through
but in
giggling.
general, if you can guarantee just all the damage to face, you press that button, especially on turn 2.
I think the fact that you have Shooting Star as well as a way
Yes.
to deal with some minions just means you don't really need the Cinderstorm here to be soaking up minion hits. Like if he plays Scale Hide or something and 3 of the hits go into that, that's pretty miserable actually. Clearly having a lot of internal debate about this play that I imagine as is often the case in the global games. You have some teams for, some players for, some players against. But it seems like the yays outweigh the nays. Cinderstorm is thrown down, and Singapore getting down to the half health point on turn 3.
Singapore already nearly just dead. I wonder if there's going to be a deckhand Shadow Step turn here to set up for the Minstrel. Because with the swing into the 3-1, playing deckhand into it feels like you just took damage for no reason. So this could at least set up into Minstrel to try and get hold of a Scale Hide or get hold of something, a Giggling Inventor.
The play could be attack in, deckhand, Shadow Step, Hero Power, then next turn, deckhand, Minstrel, Shadow Step your deckhand again, and then the turn after, deckhand, Zola, deckhand. You've, if not completed the quest at that point, you're very close, and the deckhand can just be used as removal as well at that point.
Right, and let's be honest, what else is the plan right now? You need to do something pretty creative, I would say, to get this done, because, yeah, you're going to be dead pretty soon. Oh, Luna. And I love the Luna this turn.
Yeah, I do too.
The most survivable and the most chance of just killing your opponent next.
Yeah, and Kirintor Mage, although it's not bad for you that it dies to deckhand and hero power, you want to stick something on the board. You don't want to give your opponent good removal options, as the other deckhand is found, which is now quest completion, I believe, as it would be 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the final piece of the puzzle needed to complete the quest.
Can they kill off this Luna as well?
Yeah, they can. They can't quite play enough minions. They're 1 mana short of being able to play enough minions on this turn to complete the quest next turn, which is pretty sad. But they're starting to get there.
And there's a turn delay, and although we, talked a lot about, yes, the mage will just kill you. Well, Fireball does 6. Say whipping a ping or something. Okay, you're on 9. There is a Luneth, but that's a whole turn. Whew. Like, playing the Luneth is 1 whole turn away.
And there's the Scale Hide. That is the card you want as a quest rogue to heal back up.
And the bounces with the Scale Hide as well.
This could be starting to come together.
Wow.
As playing the deckhand here, that is quest completion next turn. They can just play it. And then the turn after, Scale Hide bounce, Scale Hide bounce. If they get a prep as well.
Just isn't bad.
That's an interesting play to me of trading away both the minions, where next turn probably takes the form of just playing the quest. So you want to have as much stuff on board as possible.
But you can't take 8. Right?
No, you just take 6. You trade in 1 and then attack with the dagger.
Oh, you want to attack with the dagger, right. Sorry, I thought you meant you wanted to leave the 4-3 up to let the Scale Hide trade into it. Sorry.
No. Yeah, I wanted to maybe see 1 minion go face and trade with the deckhand.
Cheeky.
You take a lot of damage, and maybe you're just dying over 2 turns than 2 consistently.
There's a Frost Nova as well.
Because I guess the counterplay here for AHQ Shaxi of Scale Hide is that he will just not play a minion. He just doesn't have to for the rest of the game.
He's got the Frost Nova to buy additional turn of you play the Scale Hide, and then wait and just go face, and it still lifesteals.
We could therefore see Scale Hide played on this turn, leaving it very vulnerable to just being killed off to Frostbolt, maybe a Fireball, a Cosmic Anomaly, Shooting Star, something like that.
So my question
But then next turn, Crystal Core comes down, you heal for 4 instantly.
is a Fireball at a Scale Hide as a worst case that bad? I don't know, because there are bounces, so you could heal for tons. But there aren't really, you expect even minions to be played after this quest.
Goes with the Crystal Core in the end. This is the standard good play. But I do wonder if going into your opponent's turn 6 where they have to play a Luneth, maybe going for the Scale Hide was a little more consistent.
There are 2 boars in Singapore's list as well, so they're in the double boar, which means
a lot of
there's
damage.
also just a lot of, with double bounce, just a lot of damage available. Prep fan, okay.
Yeah, turn late on the pepperoni there.
Or is he just dead next turn? Yeah.
He's taking a lot.
Oh, wait. He's not dead next turn. There's just not the mana.
There's not the mana, yes. Celestial Emissary, Frostbolt.
Okay.
Fireball isn't there. He's just digging
Need
through
a
his deck.
charge minion.
Ooh, Giggling's nice.
Giggling soaks up any of the arcane missiles, the spread damage you can't really control.
I think the one thing I wanted to see on this turn very much was Vicious Scalehide. Because you're not getting the immediate rush value. It's very vulnerable. But I think they have to expect that AHQ Shaxi can just not play anything for the rest of the game and win.
But we can see the glyph.
Yeah,
saving
the
grace
Frost Nova
glyph
is insane. That is what turns
saving
this
the
around.
day.
That will probably just win the game for Shaxi.
So now, and this sounds like it would be a crazy thing to get wrong, but for example, Celestial Emissary cannot come down this turn because of the chance of bounces.
Yes.
Right? So it's small, it's unlikely to happen because there's so much damage over 2 turns.
I agree.
But it's just one thing where it's like, you don't want to be like, oh yeah, they're frozen, they're fine. And it's like, oh wait, no.
Yeah,
There's a Nova.
don't play minions. This is the card that's always coming down. Just start with that.
Right.
And the next to hit, Fireball, Frostbolt, face.
And Chaos can't believe it. Because this is just going to be gameroo. Because of that Celestial Emissary next turn.
Yes, that's right. Lethal damage is there. I guess, going with the ping face just guarantees that you have lethal in hand. Vanish,
Nope.
doesn't heal up. Panda, doesn't heal up.
So they're going to draw for something?
I think they're just digging for an out that isn't there. They can't afford to play Valera.
Okay.
Even if they'd drawn it on the top, the mana wouldn't have been there.
I've got a Quest Rogue suggestion.
Please.
As a master deck builder, I am known.
Are you going to say Voodoo
Doctor?
Doctor?
No.
Right.
I'm going to say, what if you play the mole guy that summons a minion for your opponent, the 1-drop? So then you can scale hide into it.
I do not like that suggestion. In that exact instance,
Well,
though,
that's what I'm
it
saying.
might have won the game.
It would have sent them to the finals at BlizzCon. It was a BlizzCon level card. But yeah, there was the win there. It was extremely favored for the mage, of course. There's nothing too crazy to talk about. Although there was a chance. I mean, that game
Surprisingly
accelerated from this is a bad hand to, oh, maybe. And we see that if the scale hide was played before the quest, it would have to have been fireballed.
Yeah.
Which then creates weird. The game goes weird there because you -6 damage but save the healing.
And that's the big decision there for Singapore in that game. I feel like it wasn't so obvious as a turn as it might have appeared at first
Not
glance.
at all. I mean, you play around Glyph Nova.
Yeah.
Like, that's a hard one.
But then the other turn that I think we maybe didn't talk about for Chinese Taipei was their turn 4 when they just played a Kirin Mage with no secret off curve, which is a very weak play when we could have seen Glyph on that turn, ping face, maybe commit to never playing a minion for the rest of the game anyway. It was a close game, a lot of difficult decisions there on both sides, but with a little dollop of help from the primordial Glyph, a favourable matchup is taken by Chinese Taipei to equalise the series.
Yeah, that's it. It's all even up now, so we're going to give yourselves just a minute to take a break and calm down while we get ready for the last game, and we're going to decide who is going to the grand finals of the Hearthstone Global Games. We'll be right back. Who is going to make it? Is it going to be Chinese Taipei or is it going to be Singapore? Singapore they're going pretty well, going 2-0 up in the series, but Chinese Taipei are no pushovers, and they've been fighting back and also dancing. By the looks of things, it was some kind of, there we go, and praying as well. Roger just saying, look, this is the last game. It's going to sound really weird, Derek, but all the previous weeks of global games do not matter all of a sudden for these teams.
Yeah.
This one game matters, and that's it.
It's all been leading up to this for them. As you can see, both teams have been having a laugh throughout with their friends, but also feeling the heat at certain points. And I imagine both teams are definitely going to be feeling that here, as the last matchup we are going to be heading into is going to be Shudderwock Shaman for Chinese Taipei up against the Token Druid for Singapore, which, you know, on its face value should be a pretty decent matchup for Singapore. You generally have enough threats as the Token Druid to outlast all the removal for Shudderwock Shaman. But we have seen a few times here at the Global Games the consistent removal being there for Roger.
Oh, Roger's loving life.
Prince Kellerset.
The praying works. Yeah. Well, also Prince Kellerset into Farsight and Manitide.
Oh my God, that is a curve.
Great draws all over. And look at Singapore's hand, definitely not bad either. And what I will say is, I completely agree. Token Druid feels good to me in this matchup. But one thing about Token Druid is, I feel right now, the way you deal with it has been worked out, right? It's whether you can or not is a different question, but for example, Roger will know that, for example, you'll need Lightning Storm, Volcano to clear an awkward board with Soul of the Forest, for example. So I think they know what to do. It's whether they can pull it off, and this hand is looking fantastic to me already.
Yeah, fairly easy to play out as well, as it would seem most of what Roger was saying wasn't discussion and instead just kind of mindless shouting of excitement as he's got himself, like we've been pointing out, just the perfect hand to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I will say as well, these two decks are very different, in my opinion, in terms of how they're built. I feel like Token Druid, 50% of the deck does one thing, and 50% of the deck does the other thing. And that's how the 30 cards are built.
Okay.
Whereas Shudderwock, you can have draws that are just, you know, this does nothing, or this is my one awkward card that does this. Whereas I feel you either make stuff or buff your stuff you've made to kill them. That's what the whole deck. So it's very consistent, I feel, with Token Druid. Even the bad draws aren't ever that bad, because you can always do one of two things.
Or buff a board that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, all the cards that buff, or at least some of them branching paths, draw you into cards that can do other things. But depending on the build, actually, I've not even checked this. What build are we rocking here? So it's the Strong Shell, Saronite Chain Gang, the build.
I think this is the build that pretty much everyone at Global Games is rocking, as we do see just Coin Whispering Woods, a play that we haven't seen enough for my liking at the Global Games. This is a brave play that doesn't often work out, because the obvious elephant in the room is, well, it could just be lightning stormed away. Everything's cleared off, your Soul of the Forest then becomes awful, and this hand does a whole lot of nothing for a long time. But if it's not there, you're looking to be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I said earlier that the strongest Soul of the Forest play is normally dealt by 2 waves of AoE. It's into Lightning Storm, as you can tell. Okay. is beaten by 2 waves of AoE. Those 2 waves cannot happen on turn 5.
Yes.
The biggest thing closest to turn 5 is Coin, Electra, Lightning Storm. You know, that's like the craziest you'd have to go. And those answers are not there. There is only Volcano. There is, you know, only an Electra. There's nothing else. So this Soul of the Forest is going to become very powerful indeed. And we could see a very quick game, considering Savage Roar and Branching Paths are available.
Yeah, obviously, I think we expect to see the Soul of the Forest come down now, set up for a stronger board on the following turn.
Do you want to kill a Manatide?
I mean, they're going to be counting up the lethal potential on the next turn. Like, if they go phase, does it set up for Power of the Wild off the top for lethal? I think that's a little bit optimistic with such a low mana cost. So you instead just go for the kills on the Manatide Totem, get them away from their Lightning Storms and Volcanoes for as long as you can. But as we can see here, Chinese Taipei have just had the most insane draws.
Right.
They're just dominating the board.
And with Keleseth is the only reason this becomes super awkward, because Savage Roar suddenly doesn't buff the Wisps up enough to kill. The Chain Gang's in one hit. I will say, though, there's no uber rush right now for Singapore to deal with this, because they don't want to burst halfway and then Healing Rain comes out and goes, oh, well, now we have to do it all over again, but with less resources. So it's nothing too crazy. Maybe they can just use a Branching Path here to help out with some of this damage. Oh, Swipe's not.
That's interesting. You're still going to be trading away if you want to clear off this board. Well, you can't clear off this entire board, even if you go swipe and trade off everything. If we were to see Savage Roar Hero Power, you even then cannot clear off the whole board.
What about Chain Gang Pass?
Yeah, I think that, like, I was looking primarily at taking proactive plays, locking down the board, but they all lead to killing off all your Wisps and then losing to Lightning Storm.
Exactly. So if you Chain Gang, you'd imagine soaks up the 2 Chain Gang hits on the other side of the board. Then there's 2 hits with the totaling 7 power, but only 2 attacks, which means that there's not a lot that can really happen. Wow, they are going to trade? At least... Oh, I don't think I like this. Because the 2 attacks that are left, that only leaves 1 Death Rattle minion.
And Wow, okay, I was going to say, they do have information that Lightning Storm is not in the hand because Roger did not throw it down on the board on turn 4.
But isn't Volcano just a nightmare?
Yes, they are both pretty bad for you, I will agree. Both clear up the board. Either way, it's obviously going to be a board clear here for Roger.
I wonder.
That was just my worry, because once Volcano happens, well, what do you do next turn?
Yeah.
Like, not a lot.
And I think it is probably going to be Volcano on this turn instead of Lightning Storm because you want to leave Electra Lightning Storm, I think, available as an option.
Yep.
Volcano
And
does come down.
funnily enough, if you don't have a minion on the board, Spreading Plague's pretty bad. So even losing their own Life Drinker just isn't really that big of a deal. Oh, okay. Chain Gang and then Floop next turn with Chain Gang?
Or Plague and Tyrant, Falupi Tyrant.
That
is
looks
really not that bad.
significantly better than my suggestion, Derek. Good work.
Thanks, mate. You can then even go Savage Roar Branching Path next turn.
That's what I'm saying. I think that just kills them, doesn't it?
Which is 4 minions on the board. You're representing then 12 damage already on the board.
That's 16
8
minions.
You then have 10 and 8. So that's 30 damage, I think you're representing next turn.
I mean, I like setting up lethal, Derek. I don't know about you, mate. But
I think so.
And also, your opponent's overloaded. There are very limited things that they can do with, what would they have? 5 mana.
There's one thing they can do with 5 mana.
But Volcano sucks versus this board, right?
How much health do you have? You
have 5,
9, 13. You have a little bit too much, so it's likely 2 minions survive. It's fair to say.
You have more than 13, right? Because you play the Arcane Tyrant for Floop.
Yeah, sorry, they have more than that, yeah.
Right.
I was just counting up, yeah, so it's 17 I think they have. 9, 13, 17. Yeah. So I think on average, 2 minions survive, 3 in the worst case for Chinese Taipei. As another Lightning Storm is picked up, this draw for Chinese Taipei has been completely absurd.
And this is the best part about playing Token Druid. Sometimes you've got a couple of minions on the board and you just kill them from an absurd amount of health.
I mean, there were consideration for other lines. Maybe they don't have the buff cards, but this does look to be like the best board they're going to be making in a while. And you can see Singapore's just how upset they are with this. Oh yeah, 2 minions was the best that could survive there for Singapore. This is the worst board that could survive for them.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the 3 attack Tyrant and the Plague Beetle.
However, if you smash face with everything here, play Chain Gang, and they don't kill anything off, I think you're still winning then.
What a weird world we live in. You can even squeeze in the ramp here because, well, yeah, UI's a pretty good card at this point in the game. Again, the strength of Token Druid is you can refill with those UIs once you've kind of thrown everything to the board.
Still set up lethal next turn, I believe, as well.
Double Storm. There is a saving grace here. Double Storm, if it happens, or Electra Storm, sure, means there's heavy overload next turn, and also Chinese Taipei have not really done a lot to get to their Shudder Walk or set it up.
That's true. Yeah.
And you're 1 UI away from having a good time because there's still a Soul of the Forest, there's still another Plague, there's still another Whispering Woods, there's still 2 UIs. You know, there's still a lot you can actually get done here.
Yeah.
Now we're going to see a Draw Town.
Yeah, Branching Paths, you really don't want to play it for draw here when you want it for the buff, but what choice does Crumpled have?
Draw more cards with Nourish. If that's not UI, it is UI.
There we go. I think we're probably going to see more draw anyway, as long as they don't overdraw next turn.
They draw 3 now, which puts them to 5. They draw 6, then UI and they have no Tyrants.
It puts them to 6 if they draw 3 now, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
so they would overdraw if they draw with Nourish here. So I guess there's not much point, really.
Yeah, you can always pass, right?
Yeah. Maybe you just ramp with it to get it out your hand.
Okay. I guess with 3 draws, if you draw Whispering Woods, Soul, then you don't play UI then.
Okay, that's fine.
And there's still double Savage Draw.
Yeah, and overdrawing in Token Druid is not that bad. It's not like Malagos or Togwaggle where you can lose a key combo piece.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good draw.
Gets them closer to the Malfurion, which is definitely worth considering here.
You can pick off this 3/3.
Probably still UI on this turn because the rest of your hand is very lackluster. It's UI away there.
2/4?
Yeah, the 2/4 looks pretty good to me. It's a close turn though. You want to get Malfurion down as quick as possible for the hero powers through to face. Okay.
I mean, I don't think that Singapore are dying anytime soon. So they can take a couple of turns just to say, you know what, let's spread this out. Let's make it awkward. Because Spreading Plague, one of the better cards versus in this matchup.
Yeah.
And it's weird because they don't. Shaman doesn't really make a board, but I mean in terms of high health minions.
Yeah, I do actually think I might have preferred the UI on that turn. Just accept that you overdraw because if
What if you overdraw Soul though, or Savage Draw? Like you overdraw what, 3 cards?
Yeah, that's bad. It is bad, but
Because you just lose though, right?
no, I don't think so. Because you don't even need Savage Roar to win this game. Like if you make a board that they can't deal with, you can go Strong Shell. If you play it with a Plague or Giggling Inventors, you still have 1 Savage Roar. You have another Branching Path. You have Power of the Wild. You have so much buff. And the next turn here for Singapore, they have Malfurion, I suppose, but it's a pretty underwhelming next turn.
Well, is UI just fine? Make a 5/5 and draw
I
your
guess so.
deck?
Just go for the UI next turn. It's close. I think it's very close.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I don't think this is strictly an insane play. You know what I mean? I think there are options. I mean, I was still weighing up just Malfurion, and you still get 2 1/5s on the board, and you get to swing for 3.
I think if Roger was at a slightly lower health total, Malfurion would be more of a consideration.
Yeah, keep
just
pushing
try and
3.
close it out. Yeah.
UI the form? UI face? Just go. Pile of pressure. I mean, with 3 minions, you can actually just die from like 20.
Yeah.
Pretty easily, to be honest.
And your opponent's just played Hemet, so going face becomes a lot more valuable due to healing rains probably being destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah, with only 4 cards in hand, it's likely, isn't it?
What to do?
They will also be hoping that Electra and Lightning Storm were destroyed. Not quite. But whatever they're going to do, they're going to have to start doing it mighty quickly, because as soon as Hagatha gets in the Shudderwock Battle Cry pool and Grumble is drawn, it's just going to be board clears every single turn for AHQ Roger, if it's not just a win on the turn they play.
Can really turn up the heat now, though. Like, look at now. Basically, this is what Druid does. I'll draw my deck. Can you beat all of my cards? Probably not when they're together, I think is the key point.
Do you ever consider just playing Shudderwock on this turn? You've played 1 Chain Gang, I believe.
Is Hagatha not more realistic?
Hagatha doesn't do much on this turn.
You clear off 1 minion, but you clear off 1 minion, you gain 5 armor, and you put the Hagatha Battle Cry.
Yeah.
So then Shudderwock's
good,
next turn can clear, more than
True.
likely.
It's worth considering, though, I think. Like, it's not a ridiculous notion, because if they can't deal with it and you get Grumble off the top, then you can just go Shudderwocks again. Maybe if you had Grumble in hand, you'd consider it more heavily.
Your hand is empty enough for Hagatha not to be the end of the world as well in terms of playing minions next turn.
True.
You've got quite a low hand count. And maybe you need the cards from the minions now to finish the game, because let's not joke around. Roger's on 4 cards left.
Yeah.
You know, he's suddenly quite behind on fatigue. Not that I think he'll get to it.
I imagine they were definitely considering it there. Also, the Glacial Shard Battle Cry they have in there as well. There's a lot of stuff going in your favor there if you do play the Shudderwock. In the end, though, they decide getting the Battle Cry of Hagatha inside the Shudderwock is worth it, because next turn, 3 damage again if they want to play Shudderwock. Or maybe we just see Mind Control Tech Electra Lightning Storm, something like that, just to obliterate your opponent's board.
Giggling Inventor Soul of the Forest feels like the strongest all-rounder. Like, if you want to... Obviously, like, Giggling Inventor Strong Shell feels good because you get the instant damage. You can kill off the Hemet with the 1/2 if you really want, with the buff from the Strong Shell. But I just like Soul there. There's 5 minions.
Yeah, Giggling Soul Spellstone to kill off the Hemet as well.
Sure. Yeah. I like it. And then you push 6.
Yeah.
Get rid of that pesky armor. If these Soul of the Forest minions live, well, you have Savage Draw, and guess what? You're probably drawing a Branching Path or a Savage Draw next turn.
Yeah. And the fact that you are putting a Soul of the Forest on minions with Divine Shield,
that's extra layers.
even if they're... this is the ogre of plays, I like to think of it as. Even if Electra Storm Surge is there, it still will not be clearing off this board.
Yeah. I do see myself as the donkey to subtle Shrek, to be quite honest. Annoying, but funny. And Sol just gets annoyed with me. I feel like we have more of a laid-back time. I do enjoy this dynamic a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I won't comment on what that makes your girlfriend, but...
I'm not going to disagree or agree.
Lightning can
due to fear of repercussions from other sources.
As we do see the Electra into Lightning Storm, one of the Annoyatrons was stolen, which means this board is going to consist of just one Treant. Pretty underwhelming considering how good that turn could have been. We could have just seen lethal for Singapore on the next turn, but because every single card, AoE card, has been drawn by Roger, he's been able to clear up board after board after board, way ahead on board now, and Crumpled is kind of left wondering, how do I gain backboard control here?
I don't know. I hope that was rhetorical, because I'm not sure now. Giggling Inventor into Strong Shell. Probably the best turn you're going to make now, because you just have to go wide again and hope the Divine Shields. Well, now you know there's no AoE. Because Shudderwock cannot be played next turn, because you double overloaded for 4 total, so there's only 6 mana available next turn. So the board almost certainly cannot be cleared next turn.
Maybe we see Malfurion Hero Power on this turn, because you get 2 taunts that you get to put into play, and next turn, Giggling Strong Shell maybe buffs even more minions. Because the chances of him being able to kill off both of your Scarabs is fairly low, I would say.
Definitely a tough call. Boot the 1-2, I guess. Mainly because it means these taunts will kill off the 1-2 with the extra attack.
Yeah, and this is clearly the strongest immediate play, trying to set up for lethal next turn. Grumble, if played, would mean that there's, 6, 9, 10, I think just way over lethal. So Grumble, not actually a possibility now. It's just going to have to be cleanup duty here for Roger.
Hex is going to be nice, though. Hex is kind of like +1 attack on this board, and keeps the taunt up, which is, a consideration.
And the Rock Biter as well is surprisingly good here, or the Wind Fury, I guess.
Yeah.
Wind Fury is less good here, but it's less flexible later on.
I think Wind Fury is better because you don't take damage yourself.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because then you're taking 3. It might not sound like a lot, but it is a little bit scary. Now 2 minions on the board. Now Malfurion could come down and help with this.
Ooh, that's interesting. Ooh. We would see Malfurion into Power of the Wild.
I think that's better than Hero Power.
Because your minion then value trades the Annoyatron.
And then you get 2 6s instead of 1 5s.
Okay, I can get down with that. And it does just set up for the potential of meaning your opponent just cannot play Grumble.
Right.
Because you're threatening lethal again.
And they're not going to die to Hagatha redos, with the Battlecry effect. I like it. And it also means that at the moment, you can't double branch in. So maybe that Hero Power from Malfurion pushes over the extra damage next turn. I like it. Because then you can Savage Draw branch in Hero Power. Or you can just, if you draw the second Savage Draw, sweet, that's way more damage anyway, cool, whatever. But you have that backup of a guaranteed +3.
Especially because looking at it, they probably don't even trade with the Annoyatron. With the Mind Control tech. They could just push everything base. That does mean that the Mind Control tech on the Shudderwock no longer activates. It's pretty close here.
Hex kills off 1. Rock Bite kills off the other. But that means no Grumble. And I think
Rock Bite is 1 short, isn't it? It's only 3 damage.
Yes, I'm being dumb.
Good.
Grumble has to come down anyway, so it doesn't matter. You have to progress, right?
Can you just play Shudderwock, though? It does the Hagatha Battle Cry, so you can trade in 1, do Hagatha. It will summon a copy of itself. It will freeze a minion.
Maybe. Freeze a minion? Although Freezing Face is probably pretty good too.
Yeah, that's not bad. It will freeze something. The Mind Control tech doesn't activate due to Singapore's play. If you think your Shudderwock will survive, then you go for that and then Grumble. But if it...
So my problem is...
Shudderwocks.
If Shudderwocks die, then you lose because you're fatigued. You've got no cards left. You can't even make spells. You can't do anything.
It was worth considering there, but the fact that they would definitely end up as 6-3s, where the Hagatha goes before or after. Die. This is the only play. And now 5 damage on board. 6 available with a Savage Roar is 11. 4 with the Branching Paths is 15. I believe it's 18 damage as I'm counting it. 5, 11, and the 4, 15. Yeah, 18 damage.
Yeah. I just counted to 18.
which could set up for a lethal with Savage Roar off, with Ultimate Infestation on the next turn.
Right, yeah.
Actually, no, you know that they have Shudderwock in hand because they will have drawn the last card, so that's not a possibility because then they will heal up for at least 6.
So now do you play around the whiff? Is that better?
I think you might have to.
Do you kill the Grumble instead? You know they've got no cards left.
Oh, that's so rough.
It is, but if you know you can't kill them this turn, and if they play a Shudderwock, which you know they're going to have, because they've drawn their deck, you know they have it. So you know what happens next turn. What you don't know is whether it's going to whiff or not. And if it whiffs, you may be able to win.
They're doing it.
Are they going UI, take it? Okay, yeah.
I think this is a good way of going about it. You have to just win in the next couple of turns. Maybe the fatigue doesn't kill you and the Shudderwocks don't kill you. It will be 12 damage to face next turn if the Shudderwock doesn't fail. And it will be a board clear. I think if the Shudderwock works, it will just be
the last card was a Chain Gang.
For Roger.
Do they even need to play Shudderwock this turn?
So if they go Chain Gang, they're not going to die, are they?
They're Blaze Invocation to
yeah,
whatever.
Maybe they do.
What is this game, Derek?
Yeah, because if Shudderwock fails, that's them out pretty much. It's only a 50-50 at the moment. Or sorry, it wouldn't be them out. They might still win if Shudderwock fails because they have 2 6/6s on the board. They can value trade.
We'll say Branching Pass plus Spellstone plus the hero power from Malfurion does do a lot to extend the game, even though they are quite deep into fatigue.
Blazing Invocation, maybe for another
Grumble.
Shudderwock. Or another Grumble. Which means now, even if the Shudderwock fails, we can see Grumble to bounce them back to hand.
If they're not killed, and there's
Shudderwock.
My.
Do you take Lone Champion anyway?
Just to...
Oh, they're taking the Ooze, okay. Just for something on board.
Yeah. Oh. Even Fort Lightning isn't that bad, Derek.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And now it means Spellstone, attack in, double Savage Roar, hero power. You're not pushing forward enough damage then. Double Savage Roar, branching paths. Savage Roar, hero power, Spellstone. Wait, if you go Savage Roar,
Savage Roar... Branching past hero power? Are we missing this? Is this lethal? They're locking this in awfully fast, Derek.
It's not.
I can't count because I keep seeing things
quite
over the board.
No. It's 15 damage plus the 1 fatigue. They're just trying to set up lethal for the next turn. They are surprisingly close here.
They have Savage Roar hero power for 5 as well next turn.
This is going to be...
So 7 with the fatigue. But the heal from the life drinkers.
But with the Fort Lightning, they can set up a 100% clear with Hagatha.
Right.
Whether this fails or not now, this should be a victory for Chinese Taipei. Because they just have too much stuff on board. Oh, the Grumble did even fail.
It whiffed. Glacial 100% freezes face because the minions are dead too. And this could be the end for Singapore. It was a good run. It was a brave run. Oh. They did everything they could to get to this point, but I think you can see on both cameras now that one team, i.e. one player at least on camera, Roger, is very excited and cannot believe what's going on. And the other team is looking a little bit disheartened because, one, that's just lethal on board with multiple 7/4s. We forgot as well the Kelsas put them to 4.
Yeah.
What a game. We saw Roger praying to the RNG gods that he gets the opening hand he needed. He did, and even then it was taken to fatigue. And it looks like Chinese Taipei are going to be going to BlizzCon as one of the other teams that make it to the finals. And unfortunately, Singapore get knocked out in an excruciatingly close game. That's all I've got.
I know.
Done.
It was such a tense last game. You know, usually Chinese Taipei should not be winning that. There should just be too much stuff on the board. There nearly was until right at the end. If there was one blip in Chinese Taipei's game plan where they don't kill off a board, they don't develop their own minions with Keleseth and Chain Gang, it all could have fallen apart. But there, thankfully, for the current world champion and his cohort, they are going to be going through to BlizzCon for the Global Games Finals.
Yeah, let's check out the series overall as we do a recap of the final matches that played out. and see what happened. As we can see now, it did kick off with a great run from Singapore, 2-0 in some pretty good matchups there, with Sequinox and Crumple taking the first 2 wins, but then Tom got angry and set an example for the team. He was like, right, give me the mouse. Won the game with the Warrior versus the Hunter, which was a dicey one at that, and then it all snowballed from there. Mage and Shaman taking wins over the Rogue and the Druid. And I will say as well, that last game though, look how much it took for them to win.
Yeah.
Every AoE, and one of them was cast twice because of the Electra.
Yeah.
Everything chained almost turn after turn to slow down the Token Druid enough, and even then it was close. Like, crazy series to kick off the day.
Yeah, I do want to commend Singapore for their play. I think they were pretty much on the money throughout that last game, going for the coin into Whispering Woods. Very nearly won them the game. They'd set up a very high chance of lethal on turn 7 with Savage Roy into Branching Paths in that last game. But as you can see here, way back when, it was just a very nice, easy game here for the Controlled Breeze to deliver lethal with all the Mind Blasts and Hero Powers.
Yeah, it felt like a matter of when and not if in this game, as they were just steadily marching towards that damage. A complete lack of Blood Reaver Gul'dan from Chinese Taipei did lead to the loss there with the help from the aspect of life, Alex Straza. And we move on to game number 2, the Hunter versus the Paladin. A terrible matchup in most ways for the Hunter, and even though it was a little bit fortunate with this Rexar draw, it was not meant to be.
It was surprisingly close. A couple of better zombies, maybe a Bloatbat, a Cave Hydra, or a Scale Hide could have turned that around for them. But even then, it was just a little bit too much consistent damage. Even with a miserable hand that has Baku, Vine Cleaver, Divine Favor that doesn't draw any cards, Leroy, the hero power on its own is enough to take the game.
And then there's the Warrior Hunter. On the flip side, the Hunter moving over to Singapore, and it's a matchup that I felt could have gone either way. I think, again, it was very close. It ended up going pretty much to fatigue, but I think there were a couple of points where there could have been maybe some more aggressive play from Team Singapore, but overall the play was spot on, and they got a few unfortunate draws again and a few unfortunate brawls, not winning that one, the Framebot being the hero everyone needed. But then Singapore, this is where it kind of ran away with the triple Mechathune Warrior game. Oof.
Yeah, a spicy way to end it, but this is often how it's going to go when Rexar is just in your bottom 4 cards and you don't get a Katharina or anything else early on. They could have played it a little bit differently. It's worth pointing out with something like Coin High Main to try and turn up the pressure a little bit quicker, which, who knows, maybe that would have given them the surprise lethal. Speaking of surprise lethals, this game, very almost for Singapore, was a surprise lethal with the Quest Rogue against the Aggro Mage.
Yeah, Chaos actually got off to a very quick quest, and it looked like it was able to be done, except for that glyph into Nova. You saw the Nova be played then. That was lethal in that game, not the rest of it. The Nova was lethal, stopping the Scale Hide, being able to be attacked, and then the craziness that was this last game, Darren.
Yeah, if it had been maybe a different steal there for Chinese Taipei, the damage could have come through for Singapore because they would have had another 2-2 left on the board after this Lightning Storm had come down. A lot had to go Chinese Taipei's way, but it's also worth pointing out, while they did get a little bit fortunate in this game, they gave themselves those outs. They played aggressively for the board early on. They even threw away a Volcano in the starting hand to get that early curve with the Keleseth Chain Gangs and the Manatide Totems, which is exactly what they got.
Also as well, they committed to the Hemet, not a card everyone's playing in Shudderwock Shaman. They played it relatively early, which blew up a lot of key cards. Zola, Healing Rains as well. They did get the AoE, which was a gigantic part in them winning that game, of course. But when we were talking about lethal almost every turn for the last 10 turns of that game, no Healing Rains make a big impact. But let's check out the bracket for this group and how it has ended up as we have finished off Group C. New Zealand took the win earlier on, but Singapore battled, taking down United States and then taking down Chinese Taipei as they lost to New Zealand. But that is a huge win for them, and you are going to see that team at BlizzCon.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the way I would have expected Group C to play out, because I would probably have put, despite Chinese Taipei being my pick at the start of the tournament, USA is #1 in this group. They're just a very strong roster of teams. This is like the first game of Hearthstone that I think Just Saying has lost in a month at this point here at the Global Games. And it's unfortunate for them that they couldn't quite get there, but still, New Zealand and Taipei are two very well-deserving teams.
Yeah, really passionate teams. You see that when they play, and we'll be seeing them playing live at BlizzCon anyway, so that's going to be a lot of fun. But that's only match 1 for the day. We have more, and hopefully they're going to be as crazy as that one. So stay tuned, guys. Play more matches coming right up.